Okay, I don't know why the hell it decided to stop the stream. So anyway, on the last part of the video, we talked about stuff in video games and some other things. And I'm here to react to things. This is a proper reaction. Don't fuck with me or I'm gonna kick your ass. If you removed my reaction, that's against fair use. That's an illegal action you're taking. Let me react, thank you. Whatever, I don't give a shit what you think.
The reason why you can't go faster than the speed of light is because that is the speed at which they need to create the simulation.
In games, you can go faster than the speed of light, absolutely. You can simulate that as much as you want, because all you have to do is say, an object at this distance is going to pass you at this moment relative to the speed of light and whatever else. Universe Sandbox, you can do all sorts of shit like that. And it's maybe taxing on your computer, but you can do it.
So that it can be there when you see it.
Okay, so Einstein had a theory. That's your hypothesis. I just want to...
Oh, sorry.
Talking about reality.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. That's my idea.
All right, so you both
thought.
That's my thought.
All right,
It's not
so
even
you've both tapped into simulation theory. Don, is that what's in practice here? I mean, are the realities layered and one within another?
Bitch ass.
And one within another?
Simulation theory, as is typically put out, like Nick Bostrom and others who are, Elon Musk, who are interested in it. So I'll say at top level, yes, it's very, very similar, but I'll make two important distinctions between Bostrom's point of view and what I'm saying. One point is that Bostrom, he says, we're probably a simulation and there's some geek with a computer at a different level that's programming us and making us up, but that geek is actually simulated by someone at an even lower level, and you can go down many, many levels until you get to the bottom level. And the bottom level, he assumes, is a physical space-time level.
A real thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I get off the train, because I say there's no reason on evolutionary grounds to believe that space-time is fundamental. In fact, we have good reason to believe on high-energy theoretical physics grounds that space-time is doomed. As many high-energy theoretical physicists say, space-time is doomed, and they're looking for new structures beyond space-time. So I don't want to say that, I don't want to buy that the bottom level is a space-time level. And the second part of the standard simulation theory that I don't buy is that the idea is that you can simulate consciousness, conscious experiences through algorithms on computers. And I'm good friends and colleagues with most of the players who are trying to do this. And it's a remarkable thing. I mean, these are brilliant, brilliant scientists. But the hard fact is that to date, there's not a single specific conscious experience that any scientific theory has ever been able to show we could program up. For example, there's no theory about how we get the taste of chocolate, the smell of garlic, nothing. So...
Wait. You're telling me that you don't know how to encrypt neurological signals? I'm sorry. We absolutely do. Listen. Look at proprioception. The ability to tell where the rest of your body is relative to itself. It means that not only are every bit of your nervous system is telling you where on the line of coding for your nerves, okay, you know it's this finger you're touching. You don't think it's a different finger. You think it's this one. You think it's this one. You are aware that I'm doing this with this finger. When I do that, I am aware of that. When you do the same thing, you're aware of the same thing. We all have the same wiring. When you have your hand near your head, it doesn't have to touch, but your body doesn't have to see where it is, and it knows this, and it's capable of doing this without looking. This is not just the positions, but also the positions and the three-dimensional representation inside your own head of what is everywhere on your body. Orientation. I'm facing this way. I'm facing that way. My hand facing whichever direction. It knows all of this information. You don't have to have eyes. You don't have to have any other thing, but it knows all of this anyway. The information in your nervous system, separate, has all of those simultaneous. Imagine the entirety of your arm and all the different neurological parts that are sending simultaneous information of where your body is when it's sitting, how the pressure is of the chair against different parts of your leg and your butt, how my foot feels when it touches the fabric of the chair versus my skin of my other leg, and like how my leg feels when feeling like the toes and the fingernail and the different temperature of my other foot and all these other things. I feel itchy here, perhaps. There's might be something I can tell about the rest of this. And it's all simultaneous information processed by the brain. And it's like, there's a thing here, right? There's a thing here. All these different hairs, specifically, you tug that hair, and you're able to tell what region of your head that hair is plugged into, where it's connected, and a bunch of other stuff that's surrounding it because of the deformation of the space of your face. Like, you can tell all of that stuff that's happening to the different stretching of the face and everything else as you pull on the hairs. And like, you could do the same thing with like your arm. Like, you can take a little hair and you tug, and the whole thing is not just you tugging on the one hair, it's also all the area that is feeling the tug. You are so aware of things. And that, okay, that's a lot. And like, you're even aware of stuff that's happening on the inside of your own guts. Not as much as the outside skin or inside your mouth specifically, or your nose or ears, and possibly eyes, but like also inside your own guts you can have sensations of what's happening and approximately whereabouts that's happening. Like, there's a muscle twinge specifically here or something, and I want to move and get more aligned and stuff and feel differently and more comfortable. And now I can feel like there's a region of my back that has extra warmth because it suddenly is on the part of the chair that was warmer. And, you know,
we are batting exactly zero right now in terms of theory that will explain a specific conscious experience.
So what I'm trying to explain to you is that all that information, all this stuff, and taste, and everything, is an encoded set of neurological signals. Now the question is, could you ever make a program that is like, I now know how to send a signal to a person's brain that is the taste, touch, and whatever else of, we will get there, okay? We will absolutely be able to simulate taste, touch, and all the heat, the pressure, any kind of texture, whatever else. Like, all of that reverberation, these things will absolutely be encoded in a way. It's not just a simple on and off with little things. These frequencies in your nervous system are encoded with tons of information constantly. The same nervous system that controls your one finger is also sending all of the signals from your entire hand to your brain and your whole arm and everything on that path. And everything about your foot is connected, linked, and neurologically sending signals alongside other things with other bits of information. There are differentiation parts of how all these different things interact and how they are coded, how it transmits whatever signals, and how your brain is able to know exactly what's happening. Like the sensation of petting your hair is like you get all these different bits of pull, you get all these different bits of reaction of it having friction with your hand, you get like, tons. And it's all there. So all you need to know is on that pathway, have something that can be a sensor that can then be aware of the different things that are triggering, and then just link into that, be aware of that, and then we already use the same neurological systems to be like, your brain is sending a signal down your arm to control your hand. If you don't have a hand and you put an implant hand that's like mechanical or whatever, you can have your entire nervous system be like, oh, I now know these fingers that aren't even mine and where they are and how much, not just that I can move the mechanical hand, but I also know how it's touching things, how all of these other things that we've installed into the hand integrate its information into your nervous system directly. We know how to do that. And it's not too much of a stretch to go from the sensation of how a hand can work and how legs can work and all these other things that we have of implants and amputees stuff and whatever is the correct word for it. Prosthetics. We have all of those things, and we absolutely can make a prosthetic tongue. We absolutely already have prosthetic noses. We have sniffer bots. We know how to do sensation encoding because, of course, sniffer bots are just having to have the information of what is the chemical signature, and then that translates into, and it knows that it's this smell. It knows that it's this and the other thing, so we can be aware, but then that can then become an electrical signal that can be sent into someone else's brain encoded correctly, because we have mapped, eventually we will map, how to then have the signal that is this. It's like, it doesn't just taste like this. It is this. Like the meat and all this stuff, and the computer, the signals incorporated to your brain. This is something we are able to eventually do. Who cares if we've done it or not? Is it capable of happening? Absolutely.
So I think it's a principled failure. These people are brilliant. Many of them are geniuses. They're good friends of mine. If we could do it, I think we would have done it. And we haven't been able to do it.
We haven't. Listen, honey, you don't understand what it takes in order to get the sensations of a tongue. You have to dissect a tongue. You have to have a living person be having all of their brain chemistry and everything else be wired into with specific. You have to do it with specific abilities to see things. And guess what? You don't need to have a brain connection. You just have to be looking at all of the neurological stuff that happens. There are two different parts of a neuron, okay? There's the electrical signals that go through the little wires, but at the ends of those wires are all the chemical bits. If you can map all the chemical bits of the triggers that are happening, then you are capable of being aware of what is being triggered and how that happens and the signals that go to your brain. And then we have it! We know how to encode chocolate. Right? That is a thing we know that we can get towards doing. You don't know it, but who cares what you know? You can learn. We absolutely have the ability to observe and be aware of all those chemicals a lot easier than the electrical signals. The chemicals and the ability to see all of that stuff is like using an MRI. Or using something similar to that, where you're able to be aware of all these different things, and then connect to specific nerves in ways that, in order to connect to specific nerves and do things, that's dangerous, messy, and whatever else, and you can screw things up. But if you just observe the chemicals, you can have all of those, this equals this equals that. And there might be things that overlap with it, where it's noise, and it has to do with the signals of your foot was moving at the same time you were eating chocolate. And we have to cancel that out, and we can do that. We know how to do that because we already work with complicated coding systems about a graviton detector, a gravitational wave detector, the LIGOS or whatever, alright? And all the stuff is, we're having to take out the sound of you stepping on the ground so that we can properly hear the sky. We have to we have to take out the noise, which is the car, so that we can hear the star. We can do the same type of noise cancellation basic stuff for brains and the nervous system. And all the information which is simultaneous is not just you tasting something, it's you tasting something, moving your tongue, flexing your tongue, all the positions of the proprioception of where the tongue is, the information of how to move and when to move and how much pressure and how much temperature, how much taste, how much everything. We are able to observe that, and we just need to go ahead and do that. But in order to do that, we have to have live test subjects and a tongue that is able to have all those different signals. All we really have to do, imagine this, you take a pig tongue, okay, or you take a cow tongue, or whatever, and you then send all those signals through, and it's like, it sends those signals, and then you're able to get like some of the encoding of what's it like memory-wise and thought-wise and processor-wise, what is chocolate, what is salt, what is all these different things with a lot less noise. We can start there, and then we can move on to the entirety of a human having like something in order to observe taste and everything else and stuff. You realize we already have smell. We already have that. We have smell. We've done that. It's a solved thing. Smell is finished. It's taste we have to get in, and taste involves smell in some degree, but there's other parts that involve the mouth and everything that it incorporates and becomes part of what is the taste. What is the taste, the texture, the temperature, that all the stuff. We can do that. It just takes, like literally imagine the types of things that you would have to do. You'd have to wire in something that incorporates with the nervous system. Now, if you knew, obviously, like, there could be taste centers of the brain, and you could work with that, and you'd have to wire things really closely to the parts of the brain, and all you need to do is pick up those signals. You don't have to, like, and you hope that you're not influencing the person's brain as much, or messing with what they're feeling, so that it's gargled, or whatever. But you can have all of that, but imagine having to have that. You'd have to incorporate wet wires into the brain. Or, people don't like doing it, mess with the brain, the freaking stem of your neck and everything. All of the nervous system goes straight through that. You'd have to incorporate knowing it is going through that part of the brain stem, and you'd have to process all that information without interference. These things are extremely regulated and extremely hard to do. It's not that we don't know how to do it. We know fucking how to do it. It's just hard to get regulations to allow us to do it. We are not barbaric as we used to do, and be able to know how to encode all these things would take a level of barbarism that we would have to get around in order to actually achieve. It's not that we can't. It's that we simply are limited as to how well we can do it without harming the person, possibly. We need to be aware of all these things. We need to be sure of all these things. We need to be fully, like, we have eye signals that have been able to incorporate into the brain, giving a person possible some eyesight, or however far that's gone. So, eyesight, smell, proprioception, and hand movements and leg movements. We've done all this. It's not impossible. So the fact that he's saying it's not.
So,
Well, I mean, it's very possible that we don't have the computing power to do it because go ahead.
Wait.
We already have the computing power. Shut up.
Okay, so all you just said,
yes.
if I may summarize, is that we don't understand consciousness yet as we think it exists. So I don't believe you're saying anything deeper than that. It's just a frontier, a neuroscience physics frontier. So what point are you making other than saying we don't understand it yet? I can say we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. That's a frontier.
Right.
I'm not trying to say anything deeper than that. If we don't understand it, we don't understand it. We have top people working on it. So where are you trying to take us there?
So where I'm taking this is that for the last 30 or 40 years, there's been concerted effort by many brilliant neuroscientists and computer scientists, and a number of theories proposed. For example, integrated information theory, Penrose and Hameroff's quantum collapse of microtubules theories. There's lots of specific mathematically precise theories, and when you ask them, okay, you have a theory of observation, conscious experiences. What specific conscious experience can you explain? And the answer is zero. And this has been after
It's still a frontier.
We know how to put a prosthetic eye into someone's head. That's not zero. That's like 1%. Or something close to that, or something. Like, what?
And what I tell people is, by the way, of course, there's a book published on consciousness 3 times a year. Okay, a number. It'll be
Like, I literally explained the entire process and how we absolutely will not do anything like that. We are working with mice. We are working with chimps. We're working with freaking yellow mold or bacteria or whatever the hell that stuff is. We're working with that fungus and stuff. We're working with the sensation of all these different things and understanding about that on all those other levels, and how this can make this happen and all this stuff. which is just to say that we've done the thing on the outside and we've witnessed it having a reaction, but to know the mapping of the information that is being transmitted involves observation technology that we don't currently have, but we are absolutely capable of imagining it. I just explained it to you. So, like, okay, yeah, you want to put something on someone's brainstem and translate all that information. We're getting closer and closer to having computers that are absolutely capable of analyzing all of that shit. We are beyond capable of analyzing all of that shit. It's not a lot of information in comparison to the compute that we are able to put to effort towards it. We can do that. And then once we do it, we are able to then know all the different things. Like, we were able to map the brain, for fuck's sakes. Knowing where the information from your eyes goes to back here, where your visual cortex is, we know that. Now the question is, how do we understand the encoding? And that has to do with, like, almost a lobotomy type of level of surgery and stuff or something. And we have wet mapping. We have, like, eye trackers, which is very simple. It's just where's your eye pointing at, and then we're able to then have a controller and do the thing and whatever. And it's like, it's like, why haven't we gotten around to doing it? Like, please get your head out of your ass. We absolutely know how to freaking lobotomize. We know how to figure out brain parts. We know how to EEG. We know how to EKG. We know how to MRI. We know how to do all these different things to understand the brain and what is being triggered. The question is, how do we take that, make it into something that is a code that we can understand, and be able to simulate a person's sensations, but also, like, what does it actually feel like to them? What does it actually do and all that stuff? And the answer is, like, you can't make a robot having the scent of violet or whatever, the scent of a rose, the scent of fresh bacon, or maple bacon musk. It's, or any chocolate cake, and you have all these smells. You can be like, this is associated with this point in time and whatever else, and context clues and all this other things. It's not super hard to have that as framework that we can absolutely make. So it's just all of the effort that it would take to do all of that stuff. And again, if you use, I think if you use a sensitive enough organ that is like, okay, a tongue of a similar animal that has all these other similar parts can be like, okay, well, this response is this type of food, and for this part of the tongue and whatever else, and it gives these signals and other stuff, and we can be like, clamp something onto a person's nervous system somewhere, and then gain similar, like, do this sensation, give this food or whatever, and then process all of that. It could include dozens of other different things. It's like, you gotta get the baseline, you gotta get the motion information, you gotta get the temperature information, all of the other background stuff, as well as everything else that might be your heart rate. If your heart is beating in your tongue, then you know that there's also a sensation that your body is processing. You're not fully aware of it, but it's there. And it's like,
pretty close. And that is evidence we don't yet understand consciousness. Because if we did, all the publications would stop and we'd be on to some other subject.
Okay.
So the more
we literally are limited by the freaking Geneva Convention.
It's published on something. It's evidence of how little we understand. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Makes sense.
And if people were doing like crazy scenarios where it's like you can have a cadaver, right? Someone in a coma, whatever other thing. You can then do all these things without as much risk, if they're already dead. Then you can have all these other things. You can keep them on life support or whatever else. And then you can have all the different things and put them to science and get all your answers. And then all we need is to then plug in a chip to your brain somewhere and then have those same informations, and then you're like, did I just give you a sensation of chocolate, or what did you experience? And we can calibrate it and we can know how to do it. But it's like, yeah, questionable. Are we even doing it? Who the fuck knows? And like, what are the odds that we're gonna have the regulations to be able to do any of that stuff? Like we used to. Yeah, 1800s, yeah, we used to do basic stuff where it's like whatever else. But it's like we went from, okay, we can do a muscle stimulator and this amount of electric current equals this amount of tension or something, but that's only one set of things. You could have a muscle stimulator that's or electrical connection to a nervous system that could be so precise that you're able to say, does this feel hot now? There's no heat on it, but does it feel hot? And how hot? Because we're putting the signals that are transmitting from somewhere up the signals pathway. They're not coming from your finger anymore. They're coming from somewhere else. And you're able to get all these other things with limbs and whatever else because amputees and all that stuff and other stuff. We're wanting to know and map all these things, and that's the real start. So if you want to get into it, you gotta get into prosthetics and get into the arms and the hands and the things. And we're trying to figure out how to transmit all those specific signals to a person's body and be like, what does it feel like to you when I do this and that and the other thing, and then have that. But like to get taste and everything else, you need to have all those other things understood and how to go around doing it. And again, like that just feels like something that's so beyond what we're capable of having the regulations to even begin to touch. We can't even, because we don't have any way of doing it safely. Stop saying we can't because we haven't. We can't because legally we can't. If we did anyway, then we probably aren't going to have that be something that it's like, again, conventions and whatever else. Are we going to accept that information? And obviously we probably will. And then we're going to be like, well, this person had their tongue removed for whatever reason. But now we've given them a prosthetic tongue. We can give them the ability to taste again, because we looked into that. And it takes like a trillionaire or whatever else putting in all the effort and not caring about their own body health, and be like that guy who snapped all of his knuckles everywhere and find out if it's actually fine or not, which is inconclusive because it's just one case point. Heyo, I'll be a little bit controversial there. I don't care. Just one guy doing it doesn't actually say if it's good or not. It doesn't explain, like, you'd have to also explain, like, how is he maintaining all of his joint stuff and whatever else.
So, Don, as you know, in biological circles, there's a lot of talk lately about emergence,
Right.
so, like the flocking of birds. You know, if you can analyze every cell of a bird and every molecule within it, it doesn't say I
Nothing
flock here.
indicates flocking.
Flocking. Yet together they all sort of know what they're doing. So might consciousness be something emergent within our evolutionary tree? Or is it, that is, you need these other base ingredients and then consciousness manifests atop them all? What do you think is built into our code?
So most of my colleagues who are, scientists who are studying consciousness from a physiological or computational point of view would think that consciousness somehow emerges from either properties of algorithms or properties of neural activity or so forth.
So a chatbot's conscious. Has consciousness emerged, given they have access to every word we have ever posted on the internet? That's a big slice of anyone's brain. Of the summation of many brains, but will you deny them consciousness? Well, because I don't think Turing would.
Turing would. Most of my colleagues would say that they're conscious, and I would say that the whole question is framed the wrong way. We're starting with something inside of our headset, and we're asking if the headset can generate consciousness. And I think it's the other way around. The consciousness looks at itself through infinitely many different headsets, and space-time is just one of them. And the proof of this will be whether or not one can actually use neural activity or some kind of algorithms to actually give theories, not just claims, but a theory of specific conscious experiences. I like the taste of mint. Give me an algorithm and a theory that says this must be the taste of mint, a scientific theory that says this must be the taste of mint, and here is why. Or, for example, in the case of integrated information theory, a theory of neural activity, and more general than neural activity, a theory about how the right kind of causal structures could be conscious experiences. I would, again, ask...
Remember when we had analog controllers? That the electric potential at different variants from 0 to 100, every aspect in between, as fine resolution as that can be, we were able to have these controllers that are like, they specifically will move 1-to-1 the position of a character on like an Atari controller. And that's because the signals were so precise that it knows exactly where the character should be because it responds to that specific intensity of the frequency. Right? And then you have a button that goes along with that. And it's very different than trying to just move an arrow around. That's a lot of inputs that then translate into a lot of variables based off some simple math and whatever else. And similarly, your body is analog, and it has all these other variants. And once we are able to get into understanding all of that code and information, absolutely, we will have all those different bits of code, and we'll know what your body translate and things are like. This part means this part means that. All these other things are stuff in the background. We're able to cancel that out and everything else. It's what we're capable of understanding and designing, and then actually getting that information is like having a probe at a certain spot to grab that information. It's not comfortable, which is a part of the sensory inputs that you would also be getting that you'd have to cancel out. And then, like, all of these other things. And it's like, huh? How do you propose besides those methods? And it's like, yeah, whatever. Eventually we will quantize, or we will have understanding of what parts are triggered along the nervous system to be like, not just it's a taste on your tongue, but it's a taste and probably includes the location of where that taste is. And then the increased amount of input of all the different bits of your mouth experiencing that taste as much as it can, and not just that taste, but obviously there are different parts of your tongue that have different experiences, so you're experiencing multiple different types of functions simultaneously that coherently all together blend and then become the thing that is the taste. You're not just tasting one part, you're tasting all of the different things simultaneously that are triggered. All of that together equals that if you were to put that back into your brain, you now have sensation of seafood or what, chocolate, eggs, broccoli, beans, and gravy.
Give me a specific integrated information causal structure that must be the taste of mint. Right now, there is 0 on the table. There are no successes.
Well, for humans as well as chatbots. So you can't blame chatbots for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think my view is
you can't assume that we would ever get the information for a chatbot before we would get the information for a human. We can't do that. Although we already have smells. And you say, oh, we can smell, mint has a smell. So we're able to encode and understand and be able to be aware of these all things and whatever, which is probably just the best freaking thing. I remember Richie Rich, and he had a smell machine, and it was basically a dustbuster that was recoded. It was cute. But also, stuff like that happens in real life where we already have a smell machine. So we have that. So then the question is, how do we encode and everything else? That's just how the machine represents the information of whatever the smell is. And it can be like, okay, this thing is this, and it's another thing, but there's also a hint of whatever other stuff. And be careful of that, because it has this in it. And we can know all of this.
Consciousness does not emerge from algorithms. It does not emerge from neurons. It does not emerge from anything inside space and time whatsoever.
Right.
In fact, it's the other way around. Space and time and everything inside them emerges as a trivial headset from consciousness.
Okay, so are we...
I have to listen to that again because I'm disturbed.
Right now, there is 0 on the table. There are no successes.
Well, for humans as well as chatbots. So you
You didn't do enough research, buddy. There are successes.
You can't blame chatbots for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think my view is consciousness does not emerge from algorithms. It does not emerge from neurons. It does not emerge from anything inside space and time whatsoever.
Right.
In fact, it's the other way around. Space and time and
There's a separate entity inside of your entire nervous system and brain and everything that is, and it is the stuff that's in the background that is making the presentation, which then the consciousness is experiencing and giving feedback on. Your consciousness is opinion. It is not senses. The senses are a separate being inside of your body doing all the sensory stuff. Your consciousness, which is the opinion, is you take the senses information that has already been processed by and sub-processed by everything, and that is in your brain, in your nervous system. Take all of that and you shove it through some other part of your brain. And that is where your consciousness is. I was almost fully sure we knew where that part existed already. Like it's like the brain stem could be part of it, but it's not specifically that. Like you do not at all have any consciousness of each individual part of your eye. and every single bit that is all of how your ears work. You just experience whatever the brain regurgitates back into you so that you can have crazy smells and whatever else stuff. I have a mint nearby.
Everything inside them emerges as a trivial headset from consciousness.
Okay, so are we looking at mathematics as the key to a solution? Are we looking here at consciousness being a quantum, I want to say thing, but that sounds really clumsy and heavy. But
I mean, why couldn't it be a quantum manifestation, though?
so in which case, when does space-time cease to exist, and at what scale, what level are you saying that stops to happen?
Well, on the very last question, I can say that it's not me saying it, but actually the high-energy theoretical physicists tell us precisely where it stops. It stops at 10 to the minus 33 centimeters and 10 to the minus 43 seconds.
Yeah, it's a Planck scale.
That's Planck scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to be clear here, space-time, as we think of it as a continuum, as described by Einstein, is very successful in accounting for what we see in the universe.
Right.
What we find is that on these, I can't even call it granular scale, because it's way smaller than that.
Exactly.
There's a breakdown, and the general relativity does not play nice in the sandbox with the quantum.
Right.
But most people are betting on the quantum because of how successful
They would. Yeah.
it has been. If I were you, I'd stick with the quantum. Stick with the quantum. But before you even go further on that, Gary, Don, I want to just assess layers of reality, not in a programmer sense, but there's still the matter of the lion that has teeth, and I see teeth, and those teeth will eat me, and so I cannot embrace your statement that is some kind of virtual reality that does not correspond with an objective reality, because I can, as a scientist, this is what we've been doing since Galileo, and especially since the 19th century, we can create a machine that can make a measurement that does not use your neurons.
Right.
And I can say, I'm looking at a furry thing with a mane and big teeth, and it weighs 800 pounds, and then it walks on a scale, the scale registers 800 pounds, a picture gets taken of it, it's got a mane, it's got big teeth, and 10 minutes later I am mauled. So I have a hard time embracing your statement that evolution prevents me from seeing the objective
They could cuddle you.
reality of what just happened.
Well, so
They can lick your face.
I'll just say that the evolution says the probability is zero that any measurement gives you a true picture of reality. But the issue that you raised about observation is really a critical one. I think it's, in fact, the central issue before science today. What's remarkable is that science does not have a theory of observation. And that's one of the biggest open problems in science that's widely recognized. I mean, John Wheeler, in his famous 1989 paper from BIT, was basically saying we have to reboot our physics with some what he called observer participants. And Frank Wilczek has said the same thing. We need to have a theory of the observer. And what's remarkable is now in the quantum measurement problem, so where we're trying to figure out how, when we make measurements.
This is when people are ignorant. Let's see if he is.
In quantum theory, we have the unitary one evolution that's called the unitary evolution when you're not looking, and then there's this collapse when you're supposed to be observing. And there is no theory yet about that collapse. So where science is right now is we don't have a theory of observation. And what's stunning about that is if you think about what science is, it's a bunch of people that are looking and talking to each other and saying, this is what I saw. What did you see? Let's compare notes. Let's try to understand how to understand what are.
We also have electronics and whatever else junk. And We also have birds that, when given the thing, they can tell which is breast cancer and which one's not, and which one's healthy. Like, they will detect which is the healthy cells, and the more brains of birds you put towards that, the more accurate it is towards telling you, hey, this one has a problem. We asked 10,000 birds. They told us definitively, yes. And that's a real study. So, yeah, it's not just the observers of humans, it's observers of mechanics, and it's observers of anyone who can have sensory input, which includes tiny little termites and tardigrades, all the way up to the size of an elephant, and every bit of, like, whatever the hell is going on in a giraffe's head.
Different perspectives and views and observations.
Well, I have to correct that. They're not saying this is what I saw, what did you see? They're saying this is what I measured. What did you measure? And so let me add to your comment that we don't have a theory of observation. That's definitely true. But as a corollary to that, we don't have a full theory of measurement.
Right.
And they're related. They're related because
the wave function collapse is consistent through all those who measure.
Correct. But except if you're not measuring it, it's not collapsing.
Right.
So they're related.
Yes.
Right. So I don't want
I want to backhand everyone who thinks about the wave function collapse when it comes to the double slit experiment. What's actually happening there? Well, first of all, you're ignoring the electromagnetic field because you're a dumbass. Every fucking person does it. And I hate all of you having that kind of opinion, and I wish you would not have. I don't hate you, but I hate the fact that you have that kind of opinion and thought, and you say it so boldly, and you don't even be like, I'm gonna use all my information about particle physics and say it correctly. You're just willing to say, we don't understand why the electron lands where the fuck it lands, because you're not observing anything correctly. By which I mean, you're not using your head. You're not focusing. You're not taking in the different bits of information that you could be getting. You're not even checking the properties of electromagnetism during the double slit experiment. What happens is, the electron gets fired from a gun. It goes with a very precise window. It heads towards one of two slits, and the electromagnetic field is pushed by the electron. As the field goes through and ripples through the double slit, then the two bubbles of the field pressing on each other make an interference pattern, and that makes the pathways that are pushing on the electron and where it's capable of going. You can simulate this with water yourself. One single push, you put it through the two slits, makes the double slit happen, makes the interference happen, and then you try having something go through that medium. It's going to go on the channels where there's pressure on both sides, and it can only go on one of those paths. Same things happen with electrons, and the liquid that's doing the rippling is the electromagnetic field. Not the electron is a tiny little dot being sent through it. So when you take an observer, quote unquote, you are using an electromagnetic beam that's going across the slit to find out when the dot goes through the slits. That beam is pushing around the electromagnetic field, so it's not able to go through the slit, it's not able to interfere with itself, it's not able to push that lack of motion on the other side of the double slit means that the electron will just keep going at its regular straight path. And that's how it happens. And there is no other thing. And if you understand that, you won't think wave function collapse. You'll think there was no other thing there to move it because you literally blocked it from being able to be affected. So when you think of the double slit experiment, you should be thinking electron, tiny little dot, wave packet that is the electromagnetic field that is everywhere, and it's rippling through with every little dot. The ripple is a continuum. It is like a fluid. It behaves like a fluid. And that's what's making the interference pattern. That's what makes it motion and interact. And there are other factors that can predict exactly where that dot might bounce off of a corner of the electrons that are on the double slit, because the walls are made with atoms. So all those orbiting electrons in all those atoms give a sudden push in some direction, and in that fraction of the time that it's going through the double slit, it could interact with one of those electrons, making a further bounce, or depending on where it was fired from the gun and its tiny little amount of difference between where that can be, it's either on this quadrant or that quadrant or that quadrant or that quadrant of the gun, and then that determines where it's going to bounce and how it's going to go when the interference pattern finally catches up with it, or when it finally interacts with that interference pattern. It literally will be forced into, and depending on the speed, it might cross over some ripples, and then the overarching continuous force that is the most powerful will prevail, and it will end up here. And we know how to simulate that. We know how to understand that. We just never have. I've been talking about it for decades. You just haven't listened.
So I'm still trying to take human perception out of this equation because I can build a machine to make the measurement. Now, you're a neuroscientist, so perception is everything, but
you can have a person having perception, you can have birds, you can have moss, you can have all sorts of things, perceive things, and get information from all of that.
Coming to you as a physicist, I cannot embrace the idea that we are perceiving anything, because we work really hard to get our five senses out of the experiment.
When you make a measurement with a physical device, it doesn't get into a scientific theory until some person actually perceives the measurement outcome.
Correct,
So,
but we can all then look at that measurement and agree what it says
yes.
without having to trust someone's testimony for what they observed.
Or are you saying that the agreement itself is a shared perception?
Well, we know from...
You can have a robotic system control all the different senses and everything else, and then it gets regurgitated and comes out, and the only thing that you're able to see is words written about the event that happened. And then everyone can agree those words are the only words that were written. And you reproduce the thing and it has the same words. That means we have something true about some factor of something in the universe. So it doesn't matter who's watching.
Einstein, that if we both are looking at, we're both measuring the velocity of an object or the speed or the shape of an object, we're going to get different answers depending on our frame of reference.
You're going to get different perspectives based on the fact that you have two different eyes that have two different distances from the event, depending on if you tilt your head. This one's forward, this one's back, and vice versa, and blah, 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 blah. Tilt it, whatever. Move forward, move away, up and down, and then tilt, and then back, and all of these things. You can have all that combined, and you're still going to get an approximation of the thing. You're still going to get the majority of the answer, And if not, you'll get more data that then can corroborate with other people's data, which puts more pointers on where it must be, and you get less inaccurate. You get more accurate. Because you're looking at it from all different perspectives, you're then able to know, yeah, it's not just here, it's here, plus it's not any closer, it's not any further away, it's not any up, it's not any down, and it's also not any more in and not any more out. And it's also a certain amount of transparency and all these other things. We can be aware of all these things.
Right, but we actually know how to translate between, you know, Neil's frame of reference and Chuck's frame of reference to say, even though they got different answers, we can make understand that they somehow agree.
There is no transference into Chuck's frame of reference.
Right.
He has his own.
Absolutely. Let me tell you something right now. It's a mess up in here.
Okay, so we've talked about how we as humans can perceive and our frameworks, etc. What if we now find alien beings who have the sensorial capacity to be able to absorb way more data
Octopus.
than we possibly could of the reality?
Freaking squid. Anyone who has weird eyes. Anyone who has telescope eyes. Like spiders or hawks or eagles. Telescopic eyes. Anyone who has the electromagnetic receptors. Anyone who has senses about smell that are beyond us. Literally, we have all sorts of creatures that are already very beyond our level of sensory stuff, and we can gain even more information about how to understand reality and incorporate all of those components into making an electronic that can replace all those components, and then we have a being that has the conceptual ability to know everything, a Superman, if you might. But even Superman was limited. He didn't have all senses. There were still some things he couldn't sense. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. But there are some things Superman doesn't fucking know. He's not actually able to be aware of everything. He's not actually being able to be aware of every possible component of reality in all facets. He's not the all-being. There are some senses that they wrote in, and there are other senses he didn't write in. And could Superman have all the senses? Possibly, but he didn't. There were some things he just didn't have. Like, probably electrostatic, possibly magnetic. He might not have that. I don't remember observing magneto senses in Superman, but we have those. We have the understanding of those. We have the understanding of how to calibrate those and how to experience, how those might experience be like.
Are we then, and I can get carried away now, looking at a fourth, fifth, sixth dimension in which these problems that we've fumbled with are solved?
Wait, before you get there, that's an important question.
Okay.
That I address in my recently published book. Take Me to Your Leader.
All right.
There's a whole chapter on alien powers that they could have.
Okay.
And there's even
I'm currently reading that, so I haven't got to that.
Oh, you haven't gotten
No.
that yet. There's a story by Voltaire, of all people, written in the mid-18th century, where he imagines, this is one of the earliest total alien fictional stories imagined, where there's an alien 26 miles tall, and stay with me. And he has,
It's in the NBA.
and I forgot.
Very good. He put the Knicks. He's joining the Knicks next year. They're gonna win another championship.
Carry on.
I don't know where he got the number. He's just 26 miles away, and he has 7,000 senses. And he comes upon other life forms and can't fathom how they can be so tiny and have so few senses and still understand or perceive
As
the
we
world.
would look at an earthworm.
As-
No. that's not at all possible. Someone with all the it doesn't matter how many different senses you have. The more senses then you have more context. You have the full ability to be like, if I were to turn these things off by having blindfolds or whatever other thing, you can have other things and focus specifically on whatever one thing. Like, we have a bunch of different things, but if I just want to do proprioception tests, I can do that. And I have dozens of senses. Yes, more than 6.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So people have gone there before, but I just want to say that these machines are not only measuring things to replace our senses, they're measuring things that our senses have no access to, like
Yeah.
the ultraviolet,
Like the ultraviolet.
and the infrared,
Right.
and gravitational perturbations and ionizing radiation. It has nothing to do with our senses, but we have machines that can measure them.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite proud of the scientific community for building what are now dozens of senses of the world, so that when someone comes to your dinner party and says, I have a sixth sense,
You could say,
give it to them.
Right.
And then
what you have is a delusion.
no. Let them have their sixth sense, but say, I have another dozen. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Okay.
why don't you be impressed with mine? So
I
anyhow,
said
I don't
dozen.
think-
I haven't watched ahead of time. I did say dozen. Come on, man. I'm already in that. Because, like, imagine having the kind of sense that... Imagine that there's a guy out there. He has a experiment where he has a specific chamber where he makes snowflakes. He controls the temperature, humidity, and pressure of the chamber, and he can then specifically create, based off of what's already there, and microscopes and everything, know how to make whatever piece of snowflake he wants, so he can replicate and make exactly what kind of snowflake he wants to have. There's also the sense of, like, when you're editing tape, like I used to edit videotape, you would have to have a sense of, well, the recording process is going to happen after this many beats of time, and then it actually starts. So you have to rewind the tape a little bit, and then once you press play and start pressing record, or whichever one, you know which one's going to trigger when, and then how much of that footage that you wanted to get, you're going to actually get. And I was good at that. I was mediocre at it for some, but I have like a 6-hour video of stuff, and that's another whole entire sense. The entire idea of being able to have the understanding of what will happen in lag time in comparison to everyone else who has good internet. I mean, come on, are you even trying to use your senses? You don't know what it's like to be aware of, at this point in time, in the future, something's going to happen, and when about that might happen. And there was a time, I kid you not, I was watching a live stream of someone putting rubber bands over a watermelon. I recorded and started recording. This was happening live. Exactly moment before it popped. I didn't start recording a minute before. I didn't start recording 30 seconds before. I started recording within 5 seconds of it popping. The predictive power of my brain to know when a watermelon's gonna pop based on elastics being put on it, even though we've been there for like 10 minutes or more. And I was like, now, record. And then boom, it exploded. And I think that's still on my TikTok. And I'm like, yeah, I'm that good. I literally am that able to predict the future. The tension of a watermelon is a Fermi estimation. The tension of the amount of visible rubber bands, which I was not able to see all of the amount of rubber bands, and the amount of assessment of the types of pressure that the watermelon should be experiencing based on the number of rubber bands and their elasticity. Get it right within 5 seconds, that's fucking genius level stuff. And it's pointless because it's just recording a watermelon exploding. But it's like, that's a level of tuned in to the universe that, like, you would have. How the hell would you imagine? There's someone flying over there. I don't know who the fuck you are. You're just swirling around. My light? And it's fucking weird. Who the hell are you? And I can't see him anymore. And that's fucking right. Anyway.
Think of things that our senses can't detect as some magical other reality. They're just...
I can't detect the amount of springiness of the elastic. I can't detect the strength from any senses that I have, except for I'm looking at it, and possibly sound, and maybe observing how much he stretches it and how much that stretches, how much tensile strength that must have, assessing his strength to pull that, and how much force it must be exerting on the watermelon, and then be within 5 seconds of it exploding when you press record. I don't know about you, but I'm still blown away by that a little bit. And that's not something that my brain was like I'm not physically able to assess the watermelon, but like I'm not able to do anything except for look, and I'm able to have awareness of reality that's like my brain can even predict into the future what is going to happen approximately. And then I pressed the thing, and I didn't even push it like multiple times. I didn't make multiple recordings. I recorded exactly when it was going to explode. That is fantastic to me in my brain. And I'd like to see someone else do that. Be like, make a bet that someone else, observing someone putting... How many times, first of all, how many times have you seen someone put elastics over watermelon? How many elastics approximately? And it's like trying to figure out how many balls are in the jar. Because you could have a number of marbles in the jar, and you can approximate the number if you are aware of balls in jars. But this is like, it's a whole thing. And it has to do with being aware of information, of my own observation of how much pressure a thing can exert before it collapses, the watermelon collapses, how much pressure each rubber band, and they are all constantly giving a certain amount of pressure, and that is a timer that is going to keep on going down whether he puts more elastics on it or not. It will eventually pop. But knowing when it's going to pop is so freaking like... I'm sorry. You think I don't know reality? And yet you say that we can't do it for everything else, much less a watermelon exploding. It's like, Fermi would be proud.
Things that our machines ultimately were able to bring to our awareness.
I don't want to speak for Don, but I think he's saying that somehow our perceptions and those machines are tied together.
Yes, in the following sense that we have, I'm claiming that our perceptions of the world are just a particular headset. We have a three-dimensional space, one-dimensional time headset with certain properties. I could imagine other headsets that have 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 20 dimensions, have senses built into them that we can't, for example, electric sensing in water, things like that. I think sharks can do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Platypus.
So your headset
metaphor?
Beth, thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
He sensed that.
Well, sense that.
So that headset metaphor is quite potent with regard to your aliens who are
Yes.
coming to visit.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, and in fact, I'm collaborating with Andrew Gallimore, who is a world expert on DMT and the studies.
The ability to predict the next word is like, it's so fun. I was having a ball watching Amazing Digital Circus episode 9. The amount of people who did say, "Wait, what?" when Kane showed up, it was just hilarious to see how predictable human speech patterns and stuff. It's like all the context clues. You're suddenly surprised about the fact that he's there. It's like, wait, what? Is like, obviously it's something that you'd expect. So it's like, it makes sense. And then you have all these other things, and then you expect the next thing to happen. It's all in your head, or it's all in your previous experience and whatever else. And you could have all those different predictions, but your brain also has those predictions and is working on it behind the scenes. You don't even know how much your brain preloads the universe before you experience it.
Of that. And one thing that I have a mathematical model of how our headset is built, and a theory of observation, and we're using that to try to begin to model how we might understand alien intelligences as having different headsets that are different from ours in ways that we can actually write down mathematics. For example, our headset may be a subset of theirs. They may have higher dimensions than we have.
Love me high dimensional aliens. That'd be the funnest thing ever.
Well, believe it or not, I met higher dimensional aliens while I was doing ayahuasca. I'm not even lying, man. I mean,
by the way, did you know this? I only knew it researching for my book.
Go ahead.
There's a subset of DMT users that all agree that they're interacting with aliens. And they have formed a subgroup within DMT the user group.
I did not know that.
It's an alien and they want to get together, see if they're actually somehow cross-dimensional communicating with aliens, and compare notes.
I would say that makes perfect sense, because in my experience, quite frankly, I had, and maybe I did, because here's the thing, I felt like,
if you go to Deep Space Nine, everyone who experienced one of your flying again, who the fuck are you? Who is that? There's this tiny little bitch up there flying around my light. It's not near the light, it's like a couple of feet underneath the light, but it's like it's around there, and it's like it's assessing things and it goes away. It's so fucking bright. Anyway, you go to Deep Space Nine, the black hole aliens, everyone who had those experiences are like, it presents to you whatever it's able to use in your head as like, okay, so Captain Sisko has Jake in his head. So he has Jake talking to him with the voice mannerisms and everything else of the wormhole aliens. Or it could be Agent Kira, it could be Bashir, it could be Odo. And then Odo would have the experiences that are more consistent with maybe Bashir and Captain Sisko and the Cardassian. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Or Odo could be connected more to the Ferengi, and he would have those in his head as the thing that is the most representing. And then you have the Ferengi, and they're connected more to different people and all of that. They might be connected to the Negus more specifically. And it's like they all have, based off of what's already present, most active representation of a being in their head. And with users of stuff, it's possible to have the most experiences that are able to be then interpreted as a different thing, can then be like, it's like trying to interpret your own dreams, only it's a little bit more reactive than that. And it's crazy. And just remember that there is a second half of your brain that cannot talk, and it'd be interesting to know if the second half of your brain is the alien that everyone's talking to. It's not the same alien, but it's the other half of your brain, the part that can't speak, but it controls the other eye. It controls all these other components that are the other half of your brain. And normally that all comes out of just you, and you experience it alone, but you're not just one person, you are multiple people in your own brain. To be able to converse with all of them would be neat, and if it does a thing, that'd be cool. But like, I already, without ayahuasca or any other thing, have experiences of giving my brain processes to my silent brain, and then it giving me an answer that then makes sense, and I wish that I had that much cognitive ability. I've had dreams where you know those games where you buy one thing, like a venture capitalist. You buy a lemon, you get a certain amount of money from the amount of lemons that you have, lemon sellers. So then my brain was able to contemplate and be aware accurately the big numbers of what happens when you have this, that, all these different resources selling simultaneously, how much money per second I get, and it updating in my head in my dream. Your brain is capable of so much math that you yourself, you'd never be able to do that much math that fastly. But your brain, it can just do it. Point that out. And if you wanted, you could put person's brain towards calculations, and they will give an answer that is so much faster than a person actually using their head to think about the answer. And on these different psychological affecting drugs, you could access parts of your brain that normally aren't part of the brain that can do the speaking. There's the idea man, and then there's a theory that I go around talking about, which is the one with the opinion, the idea man. You don't just have one idea man in your brain. There are people who have had the lobes separated, right? That part of the region separated. And the one has one opinion about what shirt they want to wear. The other one has the other opinion. And one controls the right hand, one controls the left hand. And they're like, no, and this and that and the other thing. And if you could write without looking at it, you would write or type whatever thing that other half of the brain that normally can't speak should be able to convey in some way what its intentions are, what it wants, what it is doing. But then if you keep on dividing, you would end up with tons of different. And all of this is a lot better if you have just one consciousness filtering it all through that one consciousness. But you still have to remember, you still have all the subconscious mind. It's not part of your conscious mind. It's a separate thing that all runs cooperating with your conscious mind to give you the feedback of your eyes, ears, and everything else around you. And it's all there. So the fact that they could have an alien connection, you're connecting most likely to the other half of your body's physiology. And they might not be connected to the same, they are not all connected to some other worldly alien thing, but they are connected more, they are more uninhibited by the concepts of what makes a human a human. They're able to experience things from all different perspectives simultaneously, separately, possibly. And that means they're able to have conversations with the subconscious mind, which is another alien being inside of your brain. that you normally don't even care that it's there, and you're very glad that it's there. You would not want to always have to do manual breathing, for example, or control your heart, manual heart pumping. But your subconscious does all that for you. It manages how fast it does, how strong your heart does things. And you can speak towards what you want it to do, but it all happens simultaneous, separate of you. Does that make sense? And I've never had an experience. I just know how the brain works.
The entire time. First of all, you're not high when you do ayahuasca. That's a misnomer. You are not, a misconception. You're not like, oh my God, I'm tripping my balls off. It's like your brain has been subsectioned and you're kind of in touch with all of the different sections of your brain.
Simultaneous,
separate.
The whole
time I was telling myself, this is my perception.
Again, I have not pre-watched this.
This is all coming from my brain. And the ayahuasca was like, and what difference does that make? Because it doesn't make any of this any less real. And the more I accepted that, the more expansive the experience became. And I met beings that told
it's like, okay, hold on.
Me that quite frankly, the way it works is we're in a really dimension.
So Don,
the majority of everything that your brain is trying to do is your brain is trying to force everything into one perspective. My eyes are independent, motherfucker. I am sober. They are independent. I can't do things with one eye and the other eye simultaneously most of the time. So the other eye, this eye, is okay, this eye is looking at you. Then the other eye wasn't. Or this eye is looking at you. The other eye wasn't. And that is something I can just do, but also you have to understand, my perspective and my window is through this eye. I don't get the other window. This is proprius. This is what do you call it? Not proprioception. It's peripheral vision. But then I switched to having this eye be the window, and that's my peripheral vision. I switch which window I'm looking through. Sometimes I'm able to try to use both, but my brain don't do that so nicely. So it works a lot easier if my brain is processing information from just one of the sides at a time. Right now it's this one. Now it's this one. This one. This one. This one. This one. Alright? This eye is looking at you. Trying to do both. But it's mostly this eye doing it. Now it's mostly this eye. And the other eye is doing whatever it wants to do. And I'm trying to keep my left eye. This is my left eye. To look at you. But also the other eye is doing whatever the hell it's doing. This is what happens. This is me in my life all the time. Separate inputs, separate windows through my perspective. And when I play video games, it normally just goes away. Everything is just whatever. But and when I'm looking at you in person, it's like, am I looking at you? And which eye is looking at you? And there's the other eye doing something else. And are you looking away from me, or are you looking at me through this or that? Right? It is that I can do that, and it's just how it is. So like, imagine with ayahuasca, you have both eyes. It's like my brain would be able to turn on the fact that it has both eyes and see independently and look in both directions. I can look in both directions and have the entire perspective simultaneously of both. Where I can see in front of me and be aware of what the hell is going on both sides of my face. Normal vision sees this, where it's in front. My vision's this. It's even more. I can see that. Compared to my head, that's behind my head. But I can see that. I can be aware of that. For the corner of my eyes and whatever else. I can be aware of both sides simultaneously. Right? And I could tell you that I'm holding up by looking, not just because of the fact that I'm doing it, but if someone else were to be like this number, that number on both sides, I could possibly be like this, that, all of these ones that they're trying to say, which one are we holding up? You do that in front of me, it's like either one of my eyes can tell you it's one. But reality is, if it's a certain distance away, or a certain perspective amount in this frame of my head, it's only perceived by my left eye, obviously. And everything else is perceived on the other side by my right eye. And the stuff in the middle is perceived by both, and it's hard because when I try to look straight forward, it's the whole thing. Teachers didn't understand it. They did not get why I wasn't able to catch a ball while moving. It's because I'm doing the calculations of where I expect that ball to end up, and I don't have any experience of where you are trying to do it based off of if I go at a consistent rate running speed towards where, where I might end up. I haven't had the perspective and experience to make the model in my head of where that's going to be and how that's going to work. Knowing that you're throwing it to try to end up on where you already also, with your perspective of my speed and movement. So if we stay with the same information, you know where you're going to aim the ball. I know approximately when I'm going to have to catch the ball, and I can then do that. My gym teacher didn't know shit. That I didn't have the experience and the framework of what is expected of the ball in motion. Oh, I can do it while I'm standing still? Yeah, no shit, because there are no variables in that. I don't have to make any predictions. It's already there. I know it's coming towards this part of my face, this part of my body, whatever else. Right? If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. But trying to do that while you're also running in some direction, did not understand that if I don't have that experience and to the consistency of that, even people who know what they're doing, they might throw it wrong. I might if I'm running at the same rate, sure, they can make the better prediction and aim where they expect me to end up, and then I can end up being there and possibly catch the ball. Or it can be like a dog who's like not even moving, and you throw the thing at them, and it hits their nose, or it hits their chin, or it hits their head, and they're off by a little bit because a part of their brain isn't processing it the way it would be optimal to do the thing that is catch the freaking sandwich.
Or new metaphor. If you can actually mathematically model that, then it becomes more than a metaphor. It becomes a tool to calculate. What confidence do you have that Chuck actually had access beyond his current dimension?
As a scientist, I'm hard-nosed and I'm completely agnostic. but I want to do experiments. And so I'm actually designing experiments with Andrew Gallimbar where we would, for example, Andrew has this technology where you can put people under DMT for extended periods of time. So for more than just 3 or 5 minutes, you can put them in there for an hour or something like that, or 20 minutes. So you can actually have So what we would like to do is say, are these aliens real? In the sense that they're sort of, we could have one nuonaut, one person who's taking DMT, go and give an alien creature in the DMT world some piece of information, and then have that transmitted to somebody else, a different person.
Good way to test that.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're coming up with experiments like that where I'm
That's smart.
hard-nosed. If that can be done, I don't know if I will believe it even then. I would want to do a bunch of experiments.
Yeah, because if me with context clues can figure out when an exploding watermelon is going to happen, other people with context clues could be like, well, I know this person or whatever else. You gotta do double blind tests and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Figure out things to be like, it's not based on context clues and things. It's like, you could be like, talk about certain things in your childhood, talk about certain things in the now, and also talk about things you would like for the future. And other such questions that you can contrive. And also talk about things that you like and things that you don't like, or a weird take, like how there's this one interesting prop that is like this 3 lasers thing, and it's in all science fiction. It's like, I think it's a clock, now that I think about it. The lasers just tick, and then that's a timepiece that's very accurate. But there is no explanation in any of the series what that freaking machine does. It's just this free lasers thing, and it's in all the different series. Like, Andromeda has it, Star Trek has it, Star Wars has it. Like, anything that you can think of. Different seasons of Star Trek have the same prop, and it's like, it's all just free lasers, and they shine at different intervals or whatever. And it's like, it does a thing, and no one says what it does. I made a whole video talking about what I think it does, which, now that I think about it, it's probably just a clock, just a timepiece, something that's like, well, we coordinated with different ticks and whatever else, and we have corroborated information about when the lasers are supposed to go off and everything, so we know time accurate to a thing, and I think that's all it is.
Yeah, you need.
I feel the same way about out-of-body experiences, where if you're in the bed, get someone to write something that's facing upwards. If you have an out-of-body experience looking down on your body, you should be able to read that statement, and then come back and say, well, what does it say?
Real, yeah.
Roses are red, or some simple phrase that would be easy to remember and to read. So yeah, that you're doing exactly the right science.
The lyrics to Daisy Bell.
Minded testing.
Absolutely. And so I'm actually hard-nosed about it and disbelieving until I have hard evidence for it. But at least this headset theory says it's possible. So since it's possible, we should really check it out. But the higher probability is just that your brain got screwed up somehow. Your headset got screwed up. But if DMT is actually changing a parameter in the headset that says you were stuck with 3 dimensions of space, but DMT is now taking you to 4 or 5, and it's just a parameter change, and we can.
I've had an experience. I actually have had an experience. Ketamine. There was a procedure, they put me on ketamine, and another thing to try to make me not be alert while things were happening. I woke up, because of course I freaking woke up, and because they don't know what they're doing. It's not perfect science, and just trying to make it so that I have no sensations. My brain was like, while I was on a gurney, they were like, can you lift yourself up and onto another thing? Oh, it's making you slower. No, I'm moving slowly, because if I don't pick myself up slowly and move over, my motion to spatial awareness pressure amounts aren't coming back to my brain until I have the experience. So the lag of the neurological systems are like, I've made this amount of push only after I've made the amount of push and have the format of the information come back to me, because otherwise my nervous system is not giving me direct feedback of, I know how much push I'm giving and how far. Because otherwise, I could simply launch myself across the goddamn room if I don't slow myself down. It's not because I have to be slower because it's slowing down my brain. I'm slowing down so that I don't run a goddamn marathon or something. While I can't feel anything about the possible pains that my muscles could be having of cramps or whatever the fuck else. And how much force my body is moving in whatever direction and doing things. I just would be like, Phew! And you would never see me again.
Actually see more dimensions than we had seen before. I certainly want to know that and find that out. So
what in evolution would have allowed that to even be accessible to us?
Well, what's interesting is when you look at, there are high energy theoretical physicists who are studying structures outside of space-time now, as you probably well know. They're called positive geometries, and the European Research Council has a 10 million euro initiative. And
that's not outside of space-time, motherfucker. Oh, God. This light is so fucking bright, dude. Listen. Space-time geometries is just like how space and matter are flowing around as they do. Is there some underlying stuff that we can't normally see, but we could put it into a simulation and explain that there's some kind of stuff happening, like the Great Attractor. What the hell is happening with that? You can understand it like someone's pulling on the bed sheet, and the entire thing is going up, and all these stretch marks, all these bits that lag in behind, all the flow that is happening is coming from something was moving in that direction. All the magnetic stuff after that point has no choice but to keep moving in that direction. And it doesn't matter whether or not there is an actual great attractor. The flow is going to flow because momentum consists and other things influence other things. So the next thing behind it is going to keep along this same flow because of eddy currents. That's just how it works. So you don't need a super great attractor magnet thing attracting things from far away. You just need to have the path carved and continuous like a river, and then it will just end up there. And come on.
There are many high energy theoretical physicists and mathematicians finding structures outside of space-time. And when you look at these structures, they have some of the structures, something called the amplitude-hedron, has a parameter n, which when it's 4 corresponds to our space-time, 1 dimension of time, 3 dimensions of space. But these geometries then say, but we're not stuck with 4. You can have 10, a billion, a trillion. So your space-time is just n equals 4, but our geometries outside of space-time aren't stuck at 4. We can go anywhere you want. So already
what happens when you talk about dimensions a lot of the time, besides the fact that you have the three-dimensional volume and the fourth dimension of when events took place, there's also, of course, stuff that's happening with regards to sound and vibrations are technically separate from that of electricity and fire, but we could use sound to control fire and electricity and heat, possibly, in general. But like a sound can exist and permeate the same space that a heat object can exist in. And radiation can happen separate from heat and flow in ways that are separate from radiation and separate from light, separate from sound and pressure, that all these other things can correspond with each other in the same space. It's not different dimensions, but it's different aspects of the same dimension. There is only one. There is only the volume. There is no beyond. There's just a layering of other functions that are also coinciding along with everything. Like neutrinos able to flow through everything because they're a very tiny thing going through what is essentially everything in space because they're so much smaller than even protons.
We're seeing in high energy theoretical physics a point or two. This may not be the only reality at n equals 4. The mathematics allows us to go to n equals whatever you wish. And 4, we got the cheap headset. We got the cheap model.
That's what I was told.
Like we also have smell, taste, pressure, proprioception of exact location of any part of your body, and orientation, not just location, but orientation. So I know my hand is facing different ways, and where it is regardless of where all the other parts are. Because however my brain does proprioception, that's something that I'm able to do. But also, with even beyond proprioception, there's like the pressure of me pushing down on my other hand. There's the touch of it. There's the temperature of it. There's the sensation of my fingernail is rough. My fingertip is soft and smooth. And those types of things. And like the pain of like if it feels like it's also digging in a certain amount. Like you go straight to the bone with how far you can press your skin down. But of course all these other things are in the way and everything. And then that also interrupts with your fingertips and something. Anyway.
I'm telling you right now, what you just described is something that the tribes who actually do the rituals where I was in Costa Rica, and they're called sacred geometries. That's what they're called, sacred geometries. And in these sacred geometries, there are representations of dimensions that seemingly are infinite, but like I've described before, are like a deck of cards. They're like a deck of cards that go in all directions, but they're dimensions. Some of them larger, some of them smaller.
One of the ways that people have for meditation, just regular, no influence of any other substances meditation, is focus on where your hands are, where your hand then touches your arm, and you focus on where your hand is, your arm is, and then you focus on your chest, you focus on your breathing and things, you focus on where your legs are and how relaxed they are or whatever, and then your knees, and you focus on your calves, your foot, each toe, you focus on your head and how it do thing and all the different ways that you can everything. And that is a very meditative whatever else, and eventually usually the majority of people end up napping because it's so relaxing and whatever else. And I experienced that multiple times, and there's no substance involved, and you're focused on specific aspects of things separately, individually. That when you're on ayahuasca, what I'm assuming is you cannot just sense, like, you could take all the senses that are just one part of your tongue and only experience that and not experience the other inputs. Like, be able to sense only sweet, only sour, only bitter, only umami, only your mommy, whatever.
Some of them where the communication happens downward, but we're in a crappy dimension where we can't go upwards or outwards, and so we have to be communicated with from above or beside.
Don, why are we in a crappy dimension? It's all your fault.
And listen, I was just like this. I thought the whole time I kept saying to myself, "You're high." That's all I kept saying. But the more I talk to people like you, Don, and Brian Green and Jan 11, this stuff that I really didn't have any knowledge of is kind of the basis of the experience. I'm just saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
so these positive geometrics, are they going to be the solution to what David Chalmers phrased as the hard problem of consciousness?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I think that the high energy theoretical physicists aren't trying to do that. They are trying to understand observation. So that's a big problem, open problem in quantum
Try to
gravity
figure out
right now,
dark
especially the attempts to get quantum gravity that have forced mathematicians and physicists to say, you know what, we've never understood the observer, and it looks like that is the obstacle. We need to go back and really understand what an observer is. And that may be the key.
Yeah, but
Again, when you're talking about the double slit experiment, the observer is extremely understood. It's a goddamn beam that you're sending across the thing, and it interferes with the electromagnetic field. And as you're sending the electron is interfering with the field. Electron is just another magnet. And if you put an electromagnet and you move it, you end up making the electric field generating energy. So that's how you have generators work. You just have the thing move, and then the magnetic field and the electric field interacts, you get electricity. When it's moving more, that field is able to do other stuff. You're able to expand the field and pick up a goddamn car, pick up a tank of stuff that you put on the boat or whatever. Pick up the entire boat if you want, with a magnetic field strong enough. As long as you have like suspension rigging, like a whole bone framework that's like the part that you're connected magnetically through will also hold all the other things that you're trying to drag around, like the walls of the boat, the floor of the boat, and everything else that could be like the heavy engine and everything.
if you're going to take something we don't understand in the quantum realm, and then you're going to take consciousness, which you don't really understand in the neuroscience realm, staple them together and turn that into an explanation of something that you're going to trust, feels like very unstable ground to be standing on.
Completely, I agree. So I think that we can talk about observers without worrying about consciousness first. We can just ask, can we get a mathematical model of observation? And I think we can. I've got my own model right now that I'm working on, and it's a simple model of observation that doesn't assume consciousness or non-consciousness to be fundamental. It just is a mathematical model of observation. I personally think that consciousness is important and fundamental, but this mathematical model doesn't require that.
We've said so many times when we've come...
The double slit experiment is literally you have this thing, you shoot it across the floor or the room or whatever. On the other end of it, you have this material that the electron hits, and it lights up where the electron is hitting. So it's like luminescent, whatever. And it makes it so that instead of a microscopic little nanoparticle or even smaller electron, electron is in the realm of, it's orbiting 1/10 of a nanometer, so it's got to be even smaller than that. Whatever. So we're expanding that impact region, and we're having this thing light up so that we can see where it hit on a macroscopic level, on a camera level, on your eyeball level, instead of having to use magnifying glasses, we just say, take that impact site and then make that ripple out so that it has phosphorescent functions or whatever else. And then, so every time it hits, we then see where the electron went. And it's pretty accurate as to where it went. You're still getting like a large ballooned out. Is if you were to have an entire sheet, you poke the sheet, the entire sheet moves, the phosphorescent thing gets hit by the electron, and it all glows in that region, right? And it glows in like the level of millimeters or whatever on something that's visibly noticeable, or even centimeters. It's so big, probably millimeters. So it's just enough that your eyes can see it. But it's ironic how much you can actually expand your eye's vision to see if you have assisted vision with like lenses or whatever. How much more accurate you could be with your testing. And you'd know that the electron hits precisely here or whatever. Not here, but here. And that's that difference of motion that's like, you can tell where that is. And with the cameras and whatever else, you can know exactly where that is. Or even like way back here or whatever else. It's like moving something 1 foot away from where you thought it was. Like really far away. And like if you were to move your finger, or like this tiny motion difference, that's how accurate you can be with the senses of whatever the thing is you want to be in. The size compared to if you're like here, you can easily tell it's wiggling and whatever else and where it approximately is at any given time. And it's on this part of the ratio, this part of the screen and all that. But back here, you can't see any of that detail, and it's not in that range. You have to be more precise, and you'd have to know it's here, but it's in this section of the here that you're looking at and whatever else.
Together, the three of us, that the problems that we're not able to solve right now, and now I'm a scientist, right? Exactly, thank you. Requires different thinking. Do you consider yourself now in that realm? And if you are, what different thinking are you looking at we now need to take? The measures that you need to bring forward that are different, that we haven't yet thought of?
Yes, so I think that we have to just think very, very clearly about what does it mean to observe. We need to get it to its bare essence, no extra bells and whistles. What is the absolute minimum essential for observation? We need to understand that mathematically.
Okay, there are at least a dozen different variations of what it is to observe. The first thing is touch something to your finger and know the position of that. Have an electrostatic reaction to something. And like if you have electrostatic and whatever else, and you know where your balloon is versus where you see the electrostatic pull your hairs, right? You can approximate where the balloon is by where the hairs move. And then, what are you using to witness the hairs move so that you can be aware of the balloon? Similarly, on atomic physics and whatever else, people have these like tiny little needles that's like, you think of like your fingernail and everything else, and you think of one of these lines on your fingernail. Fingernails have lines, right? My fingernail has lines. They're not easily visible, but they're visible there. Or you can see like a little dot or something, and then even on that dot there's another tiny little thing that's like another level smaller, and it's this tiny little thing that you're able to say that it's poking up, and that little poke up thing is able to only be able to move very tiny amounts, and that can scan a region of a thing. So now we are able to see like exactly like all the creases of your fingerprint and whatever else. Like fingerprint that can be like there or whatever. My screen is not very big, so it's not good for that. But like you could zoom in on like this. I have a tiny little can you see that? I have a tiny little hangnail, whatever. You can see that tiny little thing. I see it a lot easier than the camera sees it. And like you can see that, and then you can also see another thing on that. Whatever. Accuracy. So it comes to what are we doing when we see something? What we're doing when we see something normally, to see the hangnail, the light has to bounce off the hangnail and then go towards my eyes. So the more light that's around or whatever, I picked it off, it's gone. But like you could have something like that and be that accurate and be able to know stuff like the knuckles and all that and whatever. And then a very tiny fraction of that knuckle and things. Specific a hair itself or whatever. Try to find a random hair. That wasn't hard. It's like you can see like an individual hair, right? And that's all you're looking at is just one hair, a little dangly thing. But I can see that, but that's huge. That is massive compared to an atom or whatever. Can you actually see it? I don't know, maybe you can. I can see it. Like there's this little tiny thread here, right? That one thing that I'm holding, you gotta be very precise in cameras and whatever else, and the light has to bounce off the thing and do the stuff and whatever else, and the hairs are macroscopic items compared to atoms and everything else. But we can see hairs with our eyes, and we can see an individual component of a hair. I have hair on my head. See individual components of hairs and how the difference between one spring of it, like you can see like it's bouncing, and the difference between any position on its bounce is resolution also of details of events and stuff, all based on the fact that you have light that is able to get off of this one thing, can wiggle it and everything, and know where it is. And my eye can just look at it and be like, this is huge. If I put it real close to my eye, it starts getting blurry. If I zoom into just that, like it has to be a certain distance from my eyes. I can't get any more resolution out of it. I can't be like, can I notice a twist in the hairs? And it's like I can notice that twist. I can notice where that line leading towards the twist is. And when it happens like right here and stuff. That's the resolution of the eyeball and everything. And it's like technology, we can go down to another million or more times more sensitive than that.
Then we have to ask, can we start with that and that alone to build up all of modern physics? So it's a new foundation. We don't start with space-time because we now know that space-time is doomed. That cannot be fundamental. It stops at the Planck scale. So what are the new foundations going to be? I think that Leibniz was right. Leibniz said we need to start with observation. He called them monads. And he said there had to be these monads that were somehow interacting and had some kind of mathematical pre-established harmony.
Just Leibniz was a mathematical philosopher,
right?
All credited with co-inventing calculus.
Okay.
And there was some dispute
Like, if you pretend that you have a wheel and whatever else, you got those sets of gears that 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 billions of rotations of one gear to make one of these gears on the other end turn even the tiniest amount of a bit. And that turn on one gear moves the other gear, and it can be more accurate than a goddamn Pico or whatever Planck scale. It can be more accurate than Planck scale if you have a tiny little needle that can tell the difference between the position of where it is, and then you twist the one thing, and it changes that little tiny amount. You know you've made a change that's more accurate than the Planck scale, because of the translation of the motion throughout all of the things has translated to that much amount of motion. And you could just keep on going with that and be as accurate as you want, but Planck's scale is trying to say that on the physical level, it doesn't actually move, and what happens is instead, at the smallest scale, it moved this much, and then it has to push a certain amount more, and then it will finally move another pixel. And you can't get more resolute than that. With the only differences being, if you have, say, a very long stick that is completely accurate and everything, then the difference in degrees can change. Where you have, oh, I'm running out of power. The difference in degrees can happen so that you have like 1 pixel in Planck length, and then go for 1,000 out, and another pixel goes down. That is a degree, and then everywhere between the 1,000 and the 0 point of the axis is different amounts of motion throughout that entire 1 pixel of Planck. So you're capable of being way more accurate than Planck, even with only Planck working with it. Because motion, I think, even though it can only be compressed into certain things, I think it's more, I think there is that potential that you could have it be more accurate than even Planck.
Between him and, of course, my boy, Isaac Newton. But their discoveries are completely independent in the sense that they represent the calculus very differently with their symbology. In physics, we use a lot of Newtonian representation, but in math, it's all Leibniz's notations.
Right. Gotcha.
So the integral sign comes from him.
I mean, you mentioned the OGs of physics there. Are we likely, through your research, to find that there are slightly different laws of physics in play that we weren't aware of?
Oh, I think not just slightly. I think that we will find that our headset is one of the more trivial headsets, and that other headsets have much more interesting physics.
But I want to set it straight here. The history of physics is not where the history of physics since Galileo is not where, oh, we all believe this, and then later on that's all wrong and we believe something else. That's not how it happens. We only believe something is true if it's been experimentally verified.
Right.
Then we find out there's a deeper truth.
Like the ultraviolet catastrophe, where we had this assumption about how frequencies and whatever else could do. And instead of thinking about it that way, you should think about it like you can wave your hand a certain amount, and in order to get to ultraviolet, you have to wave it this much versus everything else. And that wave goes out, and it's that wave that is produced from the ultraviolet level of motion that then gets picked up by the stuff that is your eyeball, or the other other beings' eyeballs, and then they're able to have that information be transmitted to them by having the excitation in the electromagnetic field that is the ultraviolet burst, like a photon or a ripple through space-time, which is like the ripple can be a single dot. That is wobbling. It could be a wobble that is an entire area that expands as it goes. And it could be a three-dimensional area that expands as it goes. In lieu of just a line, it could be a three-dimensional push. That's like my three-dimensional hand moving towards you. The entire thing gets bigger to your perspective, but as it gets close, more of it is near, and whatever. Other parts are far away, everything. You have the understanding of all of that perspective, where it is, from looking at it, and stuff. Blah blah blah.
Get right in your bailiwick here. There's a deeper truth in which that's embedded,
Right.
and that's just a special case.
Yeah, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Not at all.
Right.
Then there's an even deeper truth.
Absolutely.
So I don't have any hesitation thinking
That's
that my lame ass 3D candy ass headset is legit in its world, but it's a subset of a much larger truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What you're saying is exactly where I'm headed. I want to show that I can start with a theory of observation, precise, mathematical, and get quantum gravity as a special case without hand waves. So theorem and proof, theorem and proof. So I decided to take Leibniz very, very seriously, and let's get a mathematical model of observation that's as simple as possible and see where this...
The springiness of springs, or if you want to go down to the level of it, the springiness of proteins and how they would tend to collapse into balls and whatever they do with their weird shapes and twistings. And that alone is the effect of everything else preferring to be in certain directions, is almost like thinking it's a quantum gravity, but it's not really. But it's like, you think of mass and itself and everything, and you think of the momentum of a macroscopic item that then collides with the momentum of another macroscopic item, you end up with essentially a gravitational effect. So if you have something that is moving and then it presses against the other thing, the gravitational effect of it moving and pushing that other thing can be measured, just like how in jets, if you do a certain motion in a jet, you experience a certain amount of gravitational effect, and that pushes you against the back of your seat, right? Similarly, you go faster, you be pushed against your seat even more, but it's not a force, it's everything that is you lagging and being only able to move as much as it's able to push you. Eventually, you push that to a certain extreme and you experience like a very large amount of gravity, and then like you're turned to mush. But anywhere between there, you're able to deform and then reform back, depending on the duration of the exposure of pressure. And it's like centrifugal force and all of that type of thing is similar, where it's momentum versus other momentum equals gravity. Gravity, as I understand it, has nothing to do with like a graviton. It's just physical objects and other stuff is in the way, and the amount of pressure that they experience exerting on each other. You resisting motion, sitting on your chair like I am, like everyone is. Well, that's you're standing. Like, you're exerting force on the chair, and you are exerting a certain amount of force on the ground. You, the chair, the building that you're on, all together, cooperatively, put a certain amount of force onto the earth that it is situated on. That entire region puts a certain amount of force against the rest of the mass that is the planet, and then suddenly you have erupting volcano because I just farted. And anyway,
pre-established harmony might arise. And the simplest idea that I can think of is forget consciousness. I'm just talking observation, not consciousness. Okay. So observation, you have outcomes. So you have a list of possible outcomes and changes. I see this outcome, and now I'm seeing that outcome. That's it. I just want to say observation involves outcomes and possible changes of outcomes. And what's the minimum mathematics that we can use to represent that kind of observer? It's a matrix that says, here's a list of all your outcomes, and here's a list of probabilities. If you see outcome 1, what's the probability that you'll see outcome 2 next, or outcome 3, outcome 4, and so forth? You just write down a matrix of all the outcomes and how they might change. And that's called a Markov chain.
And you can figure out when the watermelon's going to explode after a certain amount of observations of the elastics and the tensile strength and whatever else, and blah 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 blah. And you just know when it's going to explode.
A Markov. Yeah. And what I've discovered is a new logic that unites all Markov chains. So I'm saying my notion of observer is a Markov matrix, which shows the observation outcomes and how they might change. The set of all possible Markov matrices is the set of all possible observers. That's it. It's an infinite class. And I discovered a logic 2 years ago that has never been seen before. It's based on something that is well known, that if I have one matrix and I can only see a subset of its states, so I got a big 10 by 10 matrix, for example, where I can only see 3 states, the big matrix will induce an apparent matrix on the 3 by 3. So it is called the trace. So for example, if you're at a light and you see red, green, and yellow, and you're seeing them change, and someone else can only see red and green, well, the red and green transitions are determined by the red, green, and yellow transitions, but you can't see the yellow, so you're going to get a different matrix for the red and green. And
actually, it's red, green, and blue.
It's called the trace. It's a unique thing. If I give you a big matrix and say you can only see this little window, then there's a unique matrix called the trace, and that's been known for a long time. It's a zero surprise matrix. And what I discovered is the property of being a trace gives you a logic on the set of all Markov chains. It's a non-Boolean logic that gives you the pre-established harmony that Leibniz was looking for. And so what we're doing now, I've got a team that's working on the mathematics of this. We want to show that with this trace logic, and it's a recursive, if you know this gets technical, it's recursive trace logic. We can build agency out of it. But then we can...
Imagine if you want to blow a bubble, right? You know that you can put your lips together to be like, and then you know that your amount of air pressure and whatever else is going to go through the bubble thing, and depending on the solution, as long as it's a bubble solution that works, you can understand, perhaps, based on the amount of airflow, how big of a bubble you're going to blow.
Show that
how fast it's going to leave the bubble
show
making.
How to build exactly space-time to get quantum theory, space-time, and so forth from this.
Well, that's quite ambitious,
man.
There,
I got to tell you, that's first of all, I need some weed right now.
No,
that's number one.
You took Chuck to the ledge there. Now you need some weed.
Yeah. You took me to a place where I'm just like, damn. But the only thing that really, and I'm not going to pretend like I really followed everything you said, except that this larger representation is not necessarily made up, but is affected by the smaller representations that you're able to see. The same way when you're looking at a light change, on the one side you see the light change from green to yellow to red, but it's the exact same transaction that's happening to somebody who only sees the light change from red to green, but they are inexorably tied together. Am I following this?
They're in the same matrix.
And in the same matrix.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
I got you.
exactly right, and I'll just pick up on that because that will give you just a little clue about how this can get us towards Einstein's theory of relativity. What we do is standard in Markov chain theory to have a counter every time your observation changes.
Mhm.
An incremental counter, right? So I see red. Okay, that's 1. Green. Okay, 2. Yellow. 3. So you just keep counting like that. Now, just think about the counter for the guy that can see red, green, and yellow versus the counter of the guy that only sees red and green. The red-green guy, his counter isn't going to go as fast because it doesn't see the arrows, right?
Exactly.
That, we claim, will lead directly to time dilation in Einstein's relativity.
I'm gonna tell you something else. You might need some weed.
I'm gonna go off on you on time dilation, I swear to God. Time dilation is somehow the theory that the amount of speed that a clock has affects the amount of ticking that the light bouncing back and forth is going to experience, and that literally means that time is different for that clock. Not that it's measuring time at different intervals based off of all these things we understand about what can make the observation of each tick be changed slightly. Right? Time dilation is people failing to understand you change the velocity of the clock, you are now changing the distance light has to travel inside of the machine. So if you have a consistent velocity, it moves at the regular rate and you can predict where it's going to be, and the amount of ticks are going to be regular. If you change velocity, whoop, suddenly faster or slower, it's like, oh, I'm moving here, and then whoop, right? What do you do to calculate how much time that woo took place? Right? You have to be aware that the light is going to experience that woo, and it's going to go all over the place. This stick, controlled by my fingers, moves very little here and very much here. That whole range. Right? Similarly, light reacting to the entire thing, all simultaneous, you don't see anything weird. Just makes sense that it would do this thing. And all I'm doing is tiny little motions on this end. Massive effects on this end. So when you're changing the velocity of the light in the atomic clock, you're changing the distance that it can do these bounces. And the amount of time that it takes for the light to go forward in a bounce, if it's moving in the same direction as the clock's motion of travel, versus the amount of time that it takes for it to go backwards, as you're increasing and decreasing the speed of the atomic clock. Notice how my finger and the thing are connected? That's weird. Can I sense where this is relative to my finger? Actually, now I can. And it's crazy because my finger can be like, I know this thing is near my finger. Right? I can pull it away, move it closer. and it's like really close. It's like I know I'm about to be touched, right? Or something, but I'm not touching you. I'm not even I'm not even not still not yet. No, still not they're not actually touching. And it's like I know that. And I know how much. That's crazy. And it's like I know it's up here. It pulls this much with a line that leads to go from my fingertip to the stick itself. And it goes down. It goes this way. And that way. And I can see that in three-dimensional space in my mind's eye from the feelings that are in my finger. You try it yourself. You don't even have to have another finger to do another finger. Make that thing. You can do objects and move the object. And then your brain is like, your finger knows where that is. Now, imagine if you were to be reading the signals coming from my finger and be like, I can move all of this, and then the finger is then having some kind of feedback that's like, you're getting the information from this finger, but you're moving everything with the other finger, or with someone else's hand entirely. And you're able to know these things without touching it, without looking at it. That's the thing.
So Don, where else can you point this trace logic? Is it just...
Wait, we just spent 10 minutes talking about The Matrix. We got to go to the movie.
Yeah,
okay?
man, because honestly, go ahead.
Let's just...
I love it.
We can't just sidestep
That's right.
The Matrix movie.
Especially since he's literally describing...
Especially since it's my favorite movie.
Okay. Well, that's another reason.
You got one of those sweaty...
Okay. The Matrix is to say that you have... Let's say you have the information of the physicality of an object, and you have an infrared camera, and you have a visual camera. You can know where that object is. However, you're looking at it in the infrared, but there's a screen in front of there. Now, depending on the size of the object versus everything else, and it's similar to regular sight, but using the infrared, you're trying to see where it is relative to its distance compared to yours, right? You're trying to see that. You can tell I'm moving it closer and away from my face, but me looking at this can be like, I can compare it diagonally to the ground, and it's more obvious to me how close it is to my nose, how far away it is from my nose. But with you have to see like the diameter of the thing as it gets closer to you, and it's taking up most of the screen now, so you can tell. You can make... There are certain things you can know about the size of the thing, especially compared to a finger or whatever. Unless, of course, it's so big that it seems to be the size of the finger. But one is like really far away. My finger's far away. The stick is close. And everything like that. And try to gain all these informations about all this stuff. But also, there's another thing about if you were to twist a weirdly shaped object, you got those weird things where it's like it's able to be different. It can make different shapes. Like you can have it be a square, it can be a diamond, it can be another thing. It can be someone's face when you look at it through a light shining on it and it shows the silhouette of a face. Those art pieces are really cool.
This is full of holes.
Okay, so when that movie came out in 1999,
Yes.
there was no it was new to many people, but no one questioned the capability of an intelligent enough system for making you think you're experiencing anything it wants to, without regard to what is happening external to your physicality. And that's a headset of a sort. What's the metaphor again?
A VR.
VR headset of a sort, except we're going directly to the neurons. We're not even using your senses. We're not. And so, could you just comment on?
Yeah.
The foundational theme of humans being alive and living out their lives in their own minds and not in their bodies.
And also how dreamy Keanu Reeves is.
So, The Matrix was my favorite movie at the time as well. I wrote
It's still my favorite movie.
It is. It probably still is, actually. I wrote a book in 1998, just the year before The Matrix came out, called Visual Intelligence, How We Create What We See. Exactly this stuff. So that's why I was so taken with The Matrix, because it was exactly what I was talking about in Visual Intelligence. And it gets very, very weird. Neurons, so I'm a neuroscientist, and I study neuroscience, and I'm all for neuroscience. We have 86 billion neurons, trillions of synapses, and yet I say that neurons do not exist when they're not perceived. So what are neurons? They are a headset representation of how our headset is engineered. So neurons are a headset representation of how our headset is being created. So neuroscience is much harder than we thought. We don't just have to understand the wiring and the physiology. That's just the baby beginning. Now we have to reverse engineer it and ask, what is the software outside of space-time, which when you project it into space-time looks like neurons and synapses and physiology. So we have a really hard task ahead of us. As long as we're thinking we're stuck inside space-time, this is the reality, we're actually missing the real science that's ahead of us. The real science is space-time is a trivial headset. Let's get on with the job of reverse engineering it and understanding the first layer of software that's outside of it. I think the positive geometries that the high-energy theoretical physicists are finding are a first step. And I'm hoping to show that their positive geometries are actually so-called subgeometries of the Markov polytope that I'm working with.
All I was asking was, do you think, as portrayed in The Matrix, you could meddle in someone's head and make them think they're living out their entire lives?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Once you understand the software, you can play.
Okay. Deep Space Nine. Vulcan Mind Melds. Star Trek had it. All these other things where you're connecting to another person's mind. Stargate had it, where it was you're all in the same simulation. And it's all based off of, like, you imagine there's a fire there. There's no actual fire there, but you're imagining it. Stop imagining it. Imagine it's normal. Right? And, like, all these other things, all these other interpretations of one brain connected to another set of things.
And you can do miracles. If you think about it, if you suppose you're the wizard in Grand Theft Auto, so you can drive the car as fast as anybody, you can play all the play all the rules inside the game. But suppose you're a geek who can't really drive, but you wrote the software. You wrote the software of the game. Well, you can turn the expert, the wizard's car into a donkey. You can do whatever you want. So once you know the software, you can do magic. And my guess is, not just a guess, if this approach is correct, when we start to understand the software outside of our space-time headset, the technologies will be mind-blowing. Everything that we have right now will be trivial compared to the technologies we want.
That'll be the next season of Black Mirror, where you get inside the brain. And that's a whole set of plot lines right there.
And you know what? I mean, can we for a second, because there's a lot of people we live in a very polarized, divisive time.
Sure.
And so,
unlike the Second World War or the First World War,
or the Revolutionary War, or the Civil War,
or the Civil War,
or the Vietnam War.
Yeah, we're uniquely divisive.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, however, I will say that, the difference is in all those times, we didn't have this constant influence of manipulation called visuals in phones and social media and algorithms.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to hear what you think about the power that these things possess, not only individually, but societally.
I'm going to re-ask that with fewer words.
Okay.
In what way has the algorithm hijacked our evolutionary proclivities?
Ooh, damn! I gotta leave now! I'm so ashamed of my question!
Did I capture what you were saying?
captured it all in one phrase.
There you go.
I hope they still play the whole question I asked.
Can I hear that again in French? Yep.
Je vais reposer la question en moins de mots. De quelle manière l'algorithme a-t-il détourné nos penchants évolutifs?
Je veux partir maintenant!
J'ai tellement honte de ma question. Je m'excuse, ça
Captured it all in one phrase.
There you go.
I hope they still play the whole question I asked, though, just so that people can.
Imagine having the ability to multi-dimension and be able to concept and hear and be able to see and process the information of all the different languages simultaneously.
How that you captured it all in one phrase. Yes.
Well, great question, and actually quite pertinent.
In other words, are we humping the beer bottle?
Hey, man, stop doing my job.
I'm allowed 2 jokes per episode. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
The background that I have in neuroscience and evolutionary biology and evolutionary game theory has made me of interest to various companies because they asked me to help them with their marketing and advertising and product design because I know the rules of the game. And so I'll give you a concrete, there's lots of examples. I'll just say at top level, we know how to manipulate your attention to make you want things that you don't even know that we're doing. So the answer is yes. Once you know the rules of the game, you can play them, and companies pay me to do that. It's out there. I'll just give you a fun one though, but there are many. Jeans, denim jeans.
Mm-hmm.
Your visual system has rules for how you create 3D objects. How do you create 3D shapes? So this is all part of the headset software. And shading gradients and lines and so forth are used by the visual system to create 3D shapes. When you put on jeans and they have distress, they're trying to make them look distressed and so forth, and they have stitching, and you are telling a 3D story about the body of the person who's wearing those jeans. The only question is, do you, as the clothing manufacturer, understand what story you're telling? And is it the story that you want to tell? Are you giving the person pancake butt when you didn't want to do that? Or are you making them look good? So I went to these jeans companies. Well, they came to me, actually. And so I showed them, I said, look, here, you're creating pancake butt, but here's how you can change the distress so that all of a sudden you can make any shape rear end that you want.
Nice.
And I remember the CEO of one company, when I was giving the presentation, I won't mention the company, he jumped out of his chair, ran up to the slide screen that I was showing how I did this, and he said, our jeans make my butt look terrible. And so they bought it. And I showed them how to do it, and they then went and made the stitching on their jeans different and the distress different. And you can make any.
Yeah, obviously, if you want to have something have more or less and everything else, you would have a certain amount of thread that is the amount of give that it's capable of having. So it won't just be flat, it will also cup. You can easily just make cups and whatever else with crochet or whatever, weaving and all this. So easy to do that, and it holds its shape even if you're not like having anything in it, which is fun.
Shape that you want once you know how to do it. So this stuff is being used. Once you know the rules of the headset, you can play the game and no one knows that you're doing it.
It's funny because the same thing happens similarly in nature. The reason why zebras have stripes is because they herd, and when they are being hunted and they run, all the stripes visually confuse the lion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Most of the time.
Most of the
time. Humans
I've
think
seen a whole lot of zebra legs up.
Yeah,
well,
I know, it's terrible.
Humans think they're quite
I
smart.
should have had more stripes. I knew I needed more stripes.
Humans think they're really smart. Some of them do anyway. And we can manipulate each other as we've just discussed.
Yes.
Okay, and we can write code, like in Grand Theft Auto.
Right.
But ultimately, who is writing and in charge of this holistic, this consciousness, this place you're trying to get to through your trace logic?
There is no top to the trace logic, which is really quite interesting. These Markov matrices go off to infinity in any direction that you want, and there's no top to it. So there is a pre-established harmony like Leibniz envisioned. They're all tied together with this trace logic, but there is no top, which is quite stunning.
In what ways have theologians approached you as someone who's opening up a box where they can put their God?
Representatives from almost every kind of religion have approached me, because I'm saying that in some sense observation is fundamental, and it's very, very close in spirit to those who want to say consciousness is fundamental. I myself think consciousness is fundamental, but I don't have to say that for this mathematics. The mathematics can just be observation.
You've made that point. It's an important point. Otherwise, you're intertwined with something else that needs an explanation. Why complicate your account?
Exactly. As far as science is concerned, I'll just call it observation, period. And we need, any scientist would say, absolutely, we need a theory of observation, bring it on. Whereas consciousness is more controversial. My own view, though, about the spiritual aspects is it comes down to a very fundamental thing about science itself. And that is this very, very simple point. Every scientific theory starts with assumptions, period. It says, if you grant me these assumptions, then I can explain all this other wonderful stuff. But no theory explains its own assumptions. Now, you can say, well, I'll give you a deeper theory that explains the assumptions of that previous theory. Yes, you can. And your deeper theory will have its own assumptions.
It turtles all the way down.
Right.
It turtles all the way down. And so there will never be a theory of everything in principle, because we'll never have a theory that explains its own assumptions. So there is no theory of everything.
That's
what?
turtles incomplete.
Okay. That's theory of everything, right, refers to the idea that you have the understanding of electromagnetism, the supposed Higgs, the well talked about Higgs field, electrons, protons, neutrons, light, all this stuff. How it all interacts, how it all does things. I still say it's interesting to think that there are two different types of gravity. There is local gravity, where everything is like pushing against the back of the backrest when you're on a jet, and you're feeling the gravity there. But there's the pull that is happening. There's an entire other set of stuff that is happening between Jupiter and the Sun that's not very local. It's local in the fact that it's both in the solar system, but that, in comparison to each other, are extreme distance apart. It's so far away, but somehow the sun's motion is manipulated by Jupiter, and vice versa. So there is a connection there. And the way I usually think about it, each object has all sorts of different bits that could be flowing from one thing to another, and as they flow, they make this connection, and the amount of connection and strength of that flow right? So the gravitationally bound particles type idea, or energy itself, which is just a very thin version of particles. Instead of electrons, we're talking about even smaller energy. Because obviously, you have the electron versus the proton. There is a stream of energy stuff that is the binding agent between the proton and the electron. There's an even different energy, and it's similar, holding protons and neutrons together, and other stuff holding the quarks that make the neutrons themselves what they are, and the protons what they are, right? And the electron and its motion of craziness, and what makes it do its thing. So there is this direct connection there. But if you think about it from a super distance, how at all does it make sense that Jupiter and the Sun are connected? Can we actually solve for that gravity? Because it's different than the gravity of stuff that is orbiting nearby. It's a different function, but it's still proportional to the mass. So we say it's both gravity, but it's not. There are two different functions of what is gravity. There's the nearby gravity and the distant gravity. There are two separate things, anomalous actions that are taking place. If Jupiter were to go away, the Sun would have less pull holding it in the solar system. It would fling away to a certain extent. And the Jupiter effect on the Sun being gone would dramatically change how the solar system interacts with everything. Even understanding the fundamentals of that, how that actually takes place, isn't understood. We don't know it. We know it happens. We don't understand the proportions. We don't know the mechanism.
Completeness theorem, right there.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a Gödel's incompleteness theorem, so it's a scientific incompleteness theorem as well. So when we sometimes talk about the God of the gaps, well, I'm a scientist. I love science. I love the rigor of science. We do not assume that our assumptions are true in science. We assume that our assumptions are consistent. We know that they're never the final truth. We're always going to have some deeper layer to go to. What we have to assume is not that we have the truth, but that we have a consistent set of starting assumptions. If they were not consistent, then we could prove anything.
And that's why scientists don't murder one another for their findings.
Generally, that's correct.
Generally.
Yeah. There's no
Wait.
marauding sun.
Go back.
Assumptions. If they were not consistent, then we could prove anything.
And that's
Say it again.
why scientists
Assume is not that we have the truth, but that we have a consistent set of starting assumptions. If they were not consistent, then we could prove anything.
and that's
Then we could prove anything, or we couldn't prove anything. What? Did he say prove any?
why scientists
Assume is not that we have the truth, but that we have a consistent set of starting assumptions. If they were not consistent, then we could prove anything.
and that
Hold on. Let me look at the transcript or something. We could prove anything. Huh. No. The opposite is true. If they weren't consistent, we couldn't prove anything. Gravity, the attractiveness of planetary and stars and galaxies and all these other things pulling on each other based on mass, very consistent for everything because the number of interactions and everything else that is influencing the gravity hasn't changed. All the stuff that makes gravity happen, the reason why Jupiter is connected to the sun at all, right, is because there is a flow going from Jupiter to the sun and back again. Or, conversely, the eddy currents of the energy around Jupiter and the sun are tight and specific, and as everything motions, everything else also is pulled along with it. There's no difference. Much. There's objects going from Jupiter to the planet Earth even, and having its own effect on how Earth does Earth things. And there's stuff that our moon does that has some effect on what the fuck happens on Jupiter. Or what happens on the sun. But obviously to a lesser extent. And who gives a shit what you're doing?
that's why scientists don't murder one another for their findings.
Generally, that's correct.
Generally.
Yeah. There are no marauding scientists
There's no right
on the front line. E equals MC cubed. Squared.
And so we're infinitely far from a theory of everything. So I'm not worried about a God of the gaps. Science is infinitely far from a theory of everything. And so I don't have a theory of God. And I'm not a God of the gaps kind of guy.
Well, God of the Gaps has been replaced by aliens. You don't understand something as aliens. And so Aliens of the Gaps doesn't have the same ring to it.
No.
So in my book, I coined the phrase, aliens of our ignorance.
Nice.
Yeah.
Don, what's the timeline on this?
Look, I ran out of crackers, okay? I'm gonna have to start eating something that has calories. We don't want that. So, here's the thing. The current, all of the concepts that include all the theories, and how everything interacts, and all the different basic assumptions of things, we understand most things. Theory of everything is to say that everything is like a simple set of rules or whatever else. But like the electromagnetic, static, and eddy currents from all sorts of things can affect stuff like air currents, and that can affect the rotation of the Earth and everything else, which can affect the feel of how much gravity you experience. And the air is nothing but quantum, but it's also a liquid. It's also a substance that is just everywhere throughout the planet, and it's like if you were to push all of the air to constantly flow in a certain direction, you could speed up or slow down the rotation of the Earth, no problem. That would change how much the sun affects the Earth. It would change the weather everywhere. It would change the amount. Changing the speed of the planet would change, like, how everything else is pulled towards it. Because there's more motion involved. So, understanding all that, being able to predict all of that, we have theories and ideas of how things go about. Being aware of all the things, we're not actually that far away. There's like maybe a handful of things. We talk about dark matter. We would like to solve that piece of the puzzle. We talk about time, and we want to figure out if there is a way to manipulate time and how to do that. We talk about, this is chocolate. The brain and neural scans and all that stuff like that will be done in 20 years, no problem. Will be done. We talk about the idea of trying to make fusion generators that make power. And we forget that we can do cold fusion, make matter, change, and then reinvent the structure of material into whatever it is that we want the structure of the material to be. And then we will end up with, essentially, the ability to make a Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future 2. Mr. Fusion powers electronics, equipment, and stuff. It makes energy, right? It's not the thing that can make... It wasn't intended to make the ability to make fuel. Transfusion, or transformation and alchemy and all that stuff, you can take all the electrons off of the proton-neutron pairs of stuff, combine them using sound and electromagnetism to make literally anything into anything. This can be printed from my trash. So I don't have to throw out anything anymore. That's a thing that we're going to figure out and know how to do and get at my level and be able to just have ease. A Star Trek level replicator is not just possible, but it's not too far in the future also. Because all it takes, at the moment, the type of technology that we're capable of doing, the levels that we're capable of doing, we're able to manipulate really tiny stuff with sound. And if we can do that, along with electromagnetism, that is the electromagnetic fields, right? Get the electrons out of the way, move the protons and neutrons where we want them to go. We can take anything. You got a poison, I can turn it into glass. Chemically. But if you got metal, I can turn that into gold, back into lead, to uranium, back into plastic, into chocolate, and I can feed it to you. It's not radioactive. Right? All the material can be reconstructed. Not only can you reconstruct material, but you can make more material than already exists. We're already doing that. We're making antimatter. What is antimatter? Take a regular, already existing substance, bombard it with a certain amount of energy, right? Particles flinging at it. It's supposed to push apart the quarks within the atomic parts itself. So, in the atomic nucleus, we bombard it with tons of stuff, and we are literally able to have a shower of quarks that come out. What happens when you separate quarks from each other? You end up randomly, and I'm not exactly sure how this mechanism works, but when you separate two quarks, the individuals that fly off spontaneously make a second quark. So you started off with an atom that is maybe hydrogen or whatever. Imagine that's what you're working with because it's just one proton. You have 3 quarks in that. You pull out one of them, the hydrogen's fine, and that quark now has a pair of quarks, is what you're left with. Now with that, along with other stuff that you add to it, you can combine these newly made quarks into hydrogen, into whatever other material you want, turn them from protons into neutrons. You can print matter. So out of energy that you're getting, you're able to make matter come into existence. This is today. We already have this. That's how we're making antimatter. But that same process can make regular normal matter. Remake regular matter, be used to make any type of matter that you want, and essentially have all those components be mixed together so that, okay, you take a puck of this regular material, or a rod of this regular material that you just have lying around. You bombard it with the stuff flies off, you recombine those parts, you then make a new anything. Suddenly, you're printing wire from what's essentially energy. E equals mc squared? Not exactly. What's actually happening is not E equals mc squared. Shut the fuck up. It's not that. What's happening is the quark's natural rebound and regenerative system go from being a single quark to being a double quark because of how they're designed. And if you're careful about it, they will actually coalesce together, become new matter. So depending on the amount of power that you put towards this process, take one set of quarks, double them, do that trillions of times. Now you have trillions of extra quarks. Combine them all they make pairs. You have a stream of pairs. Fuse them together. Anything your heart desires is now yours. You took power from the sun, electrical energy. You made photons or something, and you do that, and it works. Now, the size of this device can be the size of a watch. You can make cubic meters of hydrogen per second, depending on the size of the generator device. I envisioned this device, and then later on I found they already are doing this. Only instead of making regular matter, they're making antimatter. It's so cool.
Research, which is ironic, seeing as space-time is doomed. Do you have a timeline?
Watch.
I know. That's how many dimensions in that one. So, do you have a timeline for the work that you're undertaking now?
Yes, I have a group. We're starting something called the Trace Research Institute, and it's going to be coming out in June, actually. We're being announced in June.
My name's
And
Simon Tracer.
I have
Shut
some
up.
mathematicians and physicists working with me. We have 8 specific mathematical conjectures that I'm hoping to prove in the next 3 years. So that's sort of the goal, to have these.
My name was Tracer before Overwatch. It was 2008. Or I forget how old it was. I was in high school when I thought of Tracer. Whatever.
Proven in the next 3 years. And the idea would be, we start with this trace logic on observers and show exactly how we get first special relativity, then general relativity, quantum field theory, non-locality, and so forth. And then, so that's the idea, is to start to reverse engineer our space-time headset by starting with observers that could build a space-time headset, but they could build almost anything else. And that's the key point. Observers can build any headset that they want. Space-time is one of the more trivial ones. It's only 4 dimensions.
Wow.
He just dissed humans
Yeah.
right there.
Well, we are very
Yeah, we already. What you're basically talking about is having an array of a system of doing all the measurements. We already have measurements. We already have tiny amounts, and we already have the ability to make black holes if we wanted to by compressing a bunch of energy into a single spot. And that's crazy.
I gotta say,
Have you looked around lately?
we really are dissable.
Well, actually, I'll turn that around now. I'll say something about you and me. We are not our avatars. These bodies in 3-dimensional space, 1 dimension of time. There's a Neil avatar, there's a Chuck, and then Don, and all these avatars are just avatars. You're not your avatar. This is just an avatar in a headset. So this is where it does sound spiritual. Now, whoever you are, whatever you are, it's not something inside space and time. Space and time is inside you. That's your creation on the fly. You're rendering your body. So my hand is something I render on the fly when I look at my hand. And with that.
Yeah, this is where we get into the nonsense hippie shit that I hate. Fuck off. No, you're not rendering shit. It's like when Will Smith, in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, his character, okay? His character, also named Will. Okay. School was happening, and I wasn't there. It all happens without me observing it. Will Smith said it really smartly. And I would love to have that clip to show you, because it all fucking happens without you being aware of it. So, you're not rendering my brain. I'm not rendering your stuff. And none of that. All the stuff that you've ever done, it's all happened. And I can predict things.
Otherwise, because there is no hand. The hand.
No. If there is, the famous phrase that people say, if a tree falls down in the middle of nowhere and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound? The answer is fucking yeah, it did. Of course it did. The properties of the tree are the stuff that can interact with another thing, and the usual thud is what will happen. Now that thud, if no one is around, you realize the thud of a tree is actually a big echo, depending on where you are. And it could be miles away, and you'll hear that thud. So, depending on the size of the tree, depending on everything else. That is something that can happen whether you're near it or not, or anything. There's hail, there's like glass, rain on some other planet. It's happening whether you look at it or not, because all the parts are there. You get into this hippie shit and you're just like, okay, you've lost credibility, buddy. Although you can lead me into the understanding of some things and some thoughts and whatever else, but you've now turned into a hippie, and now you're pointless. I don't care about you anymore. I'm not going to consider everything you say without also giving the grain of salt and be like, yeah, no, you gotta also think of all these other parts, because it's not as simple as, oh no, it's not happening unless I fucking render it. Dude, you can be brain dead and your hand's gonna be there anyway. You can be absolutely been killed, and just because somebody's not looking at you, eventually they'll go over there and they'll find your dead body, or your unconscious body, or whatever the fuck, or something you left behind like a record, and they'll play the record and it'll have the music that was played put onto it, etched onto it from all time, and it will still be there. And as long as those materials don't degrade or whatever else, you can have that record and come play it again, and it will play the music on a record player for anyone to hear at any point in time in the future, and it doesn't matter the hell about any of it. And there are entire biological processes, and the bug caught in the amber. We didn't manufacture a bug caught in amber that happened millions or whatever amount of years ago, where the bug was stuck in the amber and it got stuck there and it never got out and it never degraded, and it just is that, and it has a virus or whatever else, and we can just pull that virus out and reactivate it and say, now we have this thing. And because it's not a dangerous virus, we could actually use it as a way to administer medicine. But anyhow, and it doesn't freaking matter if anyone has seen it in tens of thousands of years. The freaking stars out there still shine bright. Whether you're watching them, whether anyone has ever seen them, even if they are behind a galaxy, they don't give a shit. They're still back there doing their thing. They're not able to be observed because they're obscured by the other galaxy that's in front of it, or the black hole that's in front of it, or an entire gigantic void of empty space. And they just haven't had the billions of years of time for their light to get to us, because they are that much further away than we've ever had the ability to have the light because of the duration of time. They and their events that are happening now versus what we can see is another 30 billion light years away from what we are able to see. We can't see what's happening then, but it's happening anyway. It doesn't give a shit if you're looking.
It's just a headset avatar representation.
Is there a way I can render a few choice bigger parts?
Yeah. Well, DMT.
So
No.
I gotta land this plane here.
You gotta, like, in order to get bigger parts, you gotta, like, do the thing that feeds your body and also sends the signals to do it. It's like you gotta do whatever part, and then that part then puts the building blocks into place to become that thing and maintain that structure. What you have is a blueprint problem, where your blueprint is saying, stop at this size and don't do any more, unless of course you're given extra stuff that you can then build on top of or whatever else. And then all of the things like fingernails are constantly growing, right? You want longer fingernails? Wait. And that's all that works. And it's not much different to that, but like your fingers, they don't grow. anymore. At a certain point, they're at their size. They don't change very much throughout the entirety of things. So in order for them to change, stuff would have to be put there that wants to grow into a bigger amount of finger or whatever else. And it's like, man, inflammation is a fucker. Where the more that you exercise your fingers and whatever else, you can make them puffy, and that sucks. You can get fat fingers and stuff. But when the inflammation is gone, it all returns back down. So maybe you need an inflammatory thing or something. I don't know. But it's like, yeah, what size are you looking for?
Let me ask you the ultimate
Finger-wise.
skeptical question.
Sure.
Let's say you come out with this account of all that your ambitions hold for you. What prediction can you make from that new formulation that will give confidence that the new formulation is real?
Well, of course,
Because what you described, it sounds like you are in a position, you've constructed this literal matrix to account for everything. And is that any different from how the leopard got its spots? The Rudyard Kipling Just So stories.
Right,
I'm going to make an explanation, that's how it got its spots, and here we are. I'm going to make an explanation, which is why you don't see this, and you like that, and we got a space-time here, and it collapses there, and we got relativity. Boom. Give me a prediction.
I mean, we already have understanding of why there are certain creatures out there who end up with crazy dots and stuff. And it's like, depending on a certain gene or whatever else, you get this weird, like, antelope. And it's like, oh, they can have the spots on it or whatever. But also they might not. And then you have, like, the weird, it's like a cross between giraffe or leopard or whatever. But it's a bison. And it's like, what? Or horse. Or flamingo.
So the first thing we'll have to do is to first show that we can get, for example, all of special and general relativity and quantum field theory. We have to do that first, right? But then we can take the next step, which is to say, Einstein had to assume that the speed of light is the same in all inertial frames, and that nothing could go faster than the speed of light. That's an assumption. What if we can prove that? What if we can show from this deeper theory that it must be the case in your headset that the speed of light is the maximum speed? Now, all of a sudden, something that Einstein had to assume, we show follows from the theory of the observers.
You lost me. Listen, we also have this weird assumption that the speed of light and everything else in the ticking of atomic clocks is variant depending on the speed of a satellite. So, speed of a satellite, very small amount. And so the amount of change in the amount of ticking is related to the relationship between the speed of the atomic clock and the speed of light itself. That ratio can then explain, well, how much difference between the 10,000 meters per second and 10,001 meters per second. And having light having to go through those two different inertial reference frames, one of them, light will be able to keep up with more because it's slower, and the other one it'll have a bit of a struggle keeping up with. And that's a 2001. And so when you go to 10,001 100, you get a different amount, and that proportional compared to the speed of light equals the amount of light motion that can exist, every action being able to be filed away at a speed and amount that is like light took this amount of extra time to go the 10,100. Compared to 10,001, compared to 10,000, compared to 100. Light had to take that much more time in order to go those different distances. So, understanding all of that, you can absolutely have a proper understanding of what is the time dilation formula stuff, and understand there is no actual difference in the flow of time, but the light has different distances it has to travel, which makes the different ticking. And that's all that it is. And it's never anything other than that. And it never has been anything other than that. And time dilation is a farce. And then the curvature of space-time is a farce. And other things like that are illusions and misunderstandings of reality. And we will grow past that eventually. But right now, we're stuck living in farces. And then on top of this, you're getting hippie. What the fuck?
That'd be a good one, by the way.
That would be one of my first ones that I want to go to. And I can give you a little hint as to where I think it's going to come from. It turns out in a Markov chain, there is something called a commute time, how quickly you can go from one observation to another. And there is a maximum commute time, a minimum commute time, and therefore a fastest transition, and it's something called cyclic Markov chains. And so the direction I'm going to be going is that because there is a maximum speed of transition in Markov chains, that's where the speed of light maximum is going to come from. So that it'll be a completely new
It'll come out of the construct.
New construct.
No, because there are things that move faster than light, or things that move fast if light in water, for example, instead of a vacuum. Light in water, there are other things that can move faster than light through water. So light's not stupid special. And then if you then have the power to have something in a substance go faster than light is capable of moving in that same substance, you know that in a vacuum, there is a potential of something moving faster than the speed of light in a vacuum. But it has to do probably with, most people would say, yeah, that's obviously possible if you can warp space-time. You don't even have to warp space-time in order to do that. It's just, how well will it maintain its structural integrity? It's ironic that we can go faster than light in a substance because you're interacting with substances, but you can go faster than light is capable of going through that same substance. Does that make any sense? You can stop a light photon in a Bose-Einstein condensate and shoot a bullet past the photon. The bullet is moving infinitely faster compared to light, because it will push right through that Bose-Einstein condensate. It doesn't give a shit. Right? The bullet goes straight through. And that bullet could be a electron, it could be an actual bullet, it could be your train, it could be whatever. And light is not super important. And the speed of light is not super important. It has to do with something's ability to hold itself together. That's the thing that will make... The thing about light is that things that are visible or able to be noticed at all are capable of only moving at rates that are based off of their interaction with the universe. So the electromagnetic field, the Higgs field, the background radiation, all the different things, they're able to push on these things and end up moving forward as fast as basic transmission can go and interactions with things. But a person's ship is capable of going faster because a person's ship can take what it's interacting with, translate that into it's pulling itself forward faster and faster and faster, and the more it interacts with, because it's moving faster, the more it can pull itself forward, and the faster you interact with more things, the more quickly you can accelerate yourself forward, and eventually you will go faster than the speed of light. You will go faster than damn anything because you are interacting with other things. Not in a vacuum, but in a substance, you can go way faster than light already, And then in a substance, a ship can move not only faster than light in a vacuum, but it can move faster than anything just on its own power, because you're able to exert a power pulling you forward faster. There are ways of doing this. I've made tons of videos talking about the Vortex engine, and I will constantly tell you, yeah, speed of light, not important, not freaking valid at all, because a light particle can only exert so much power on the universe, so its speed is limited. Your speed is not. In your ship, you can go way faster than the speed of light. Everything you're colliding with and interacting with can be converted into more pull and more push, but the best power is not push, it is pull. Don't be using rockets to try to go faster than the speed of light. You'll fuck up every time, because your interactions are between you and the thing behind you. You can't make a reaction fast enough pushing in order to go faster than the speed of light, but you sure as hell can pull. And that's where people's brains are stuck. They are stuck in the rocket mode because that is the best way that we know how to get anything moving. But instead, you could be a helicopter and go through space that way. Or use electromagnetic fields and pull yourself through that way. And the more power to the electromagnetic field, the more power to the thing that is pulling you forward based off everything you're interacting with as you're traveling through space. You hit more stuff, right? You then drag that behind you and yank yourself forward quickly. Instead of colliding with things and making it slow you down, you're literally able to make you go faster. This is real science. It's not bunk. It's something that we actually can do. It's just not common, talked about, theorized, made. I mean, a scramjet is the same thing, approximately. You pull the thing in and you push it out the back with extra force. But the pulling in factor is what I'm focused on, because that's the thing that will get you go faster than the speed of light. But in order to do it, you also have to have structural integrity. Your whole ship has to hold itself together better than the electromagnetic forces can do, better than strong nuclear forces can do. That's your limits. The strength of atomic bonds. That's the reason things fall apart at high speeds.
But then that will just be the beginning, because then I want to actually show, once we go into these higher dimensions, I can then start building technologies. Remember, my clock, if I have a bigger space-time than you, my clock is ticking a lot more than you. That means I can do miracles, right? Because for 2 ticks of your clock, I might have 1,000,000 ticks of my clock. So I can be doing all sorts of stuff. So this may be how I'll explain UAP kind of phenomena that seem to violate the laws of physics. They do violate our laws if you're stuck in our headset, but they may have a headset in which their clock is ticking 1,000,000 times to 1 tick of ours, and so what looks like instantaneous acceleration to us is...
Yeah, it's like your idea of how you can think about something over there is how fast you could end up moving over there. Star Trek also talked about that with the Traveler. But in regards to reality, if you were to be able to somehow reach up into higher dimensions, teleportation from the regular space into the higher dimension and back down into regular space could compress that space so that there isn't a distance between you and this thing over there. That's like how portals works. Everything in the entire universe is all interacting with a point that it goes into and out of. That point is the center of the universe. The entire thing is there. So a portal on one side of the wall versus another side of the wall is right next to each other when it comes to that point. And they just go straight through. Similar technologies could be made in reality. We just aren't quite there yet. But then, regards to time, that's a different story. But whatever. But if time were to do the things that we claim that it does, then we could do time travel easily by just moving from one point to another. Because if the flow of time, if it were to be a space-time curvature and stuff, if that were to even work, then you could curl it in on itself so much that a part that was in the past is still there and you are right next to it. You just transition into it, and then you are now a part of a past instance of time. And the more you do that, the further back in time you go. And then you make a system that is a ship that transitions the stuff in front of you into its past instances, where the entire film around your ship is the space-time curvature warping, so that it inverts how time works in that layer. And so as you're transmitting yourself through space, basically TARDIS, anyway, you're able to then move anywhere you want through time. And there's no reason to think that you could only move a second into the past. You could move any speed you want at 1,000 years a second into the past, which is something that would also help you move into distances that are far away.
For them, a walk in the park.
Or just a fuzzy video artifact of a monochromatic data-taking device. But, okay.
That's right.
One or the other. So I got you. So it's the experience of something that would be normal in their reference frame that to us looks extraordinary or even miraculous.
Right. That's right. And there's another aspect of this that's really quite interesting. And if you think about it, I look around and I see an ant, and I ask myself, how much does the ant see about me? And my feeling is probably nothing, almost nothing. It doesn't know anything about me. But then, and if you ask, okay, so how would it represent me? It might not even represent me at all, but if it does represent me, it's something trivial. Well, now turn it around. I see the ant as fairly trivial. But remember, this is just a headset. The headset dumbs things down. It's quite possible that what I see as an ant, the reality that I'm interacting with is so transcendent, so much bigger than me, that if I could actually understand it, I would fall down speechless before it. But my headset turns it down into a tiny little ant. So this gives us a sort of a different way of looking at everything around us. What I'm seeing is my headset dumbed down representation of something that's not inside the headset. So it changes the whole game of how I look at the world. I see an ant, and I have no idea what I'm really dealing with. All I know is my headset is so stupid that it's just...
You see a polarizing filter interacting with magnetic field lines, or that weird liquid or metal shavings interacting with magnetic field lines, and you're like, I can drag it around and I can do this thing, but I don't know what the hell is the physical connection between this magnet and those shavings, but I can do all of that, and there's like glass between it, so I can be like moving it around without it actually doing stuff. And there's all sorts of ways you can do with stuff like that. People have done a lot with it. And it's fun. It's something you can't see, but you can observe, and you are aware of that, and it's another thing that you're able to then incorporate into your headset because you have that tool. Other such things also include like the ability to know where sound is coming from. There are these sound goggles that people have made that is really neat and stuff, where it's like they can tell where the sound emanates from and where it echoes the most or whatever, something.
That's showing me an ant. That's what I know.
So, just touching on Darwin's theory, origins of species, etc., obviously pre-internet, pre-computers, are you kind of telling us that it is the most amazing theory and all it needed was mathematics to show how amazing it was?
Well, I think that Darwin's theory is brilliant, and evolutionary game theory, the mathematics, really brought out all the wonderful power of Darwin's theory. But now, a step back, it's a theory that's sort of tied to our headset, right? Every scientific theory has its scope and also its limits. So I think inside the headset, Darwin is the best theory that we have for understanding biology inside of our headset. Once we get outside the headset, I will want to find a deeper theory and show how Darwin's theory is a special case of something far deeper. So, but that's going to be the fate.
Now you're getting greedy.
No, that's
Einstein wasn't good enough. You're going to throw Darwin into the pot.
Right.
Science must always get to deeper theories. We always expect that our theories are just stepping stones, right?
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, good way.
I mean, the stuff that Einstein does versus Newtonian and all of that, there are still components of what is all the functions that happens with Newtonian, but you gotta go beyond Newtonian and go into Einstein's theories, and then you gotta go past Einstein's theories into what the fuck is black holes and everything else, but also now dark matter and stuff, ideas, and whatever else. But you have to understand, all of that, like the stuff that has to do with magnetism and gravity, is about stuff that we normally can't see. We have to have some other thing to visualize it. Like, you can visualize sound. You can visualize the intensity of the heat a person's body is emitting, and so you can tell this part is the most hot, this part is the least hot with different colors of stuff. That's how the infrared camera stuff works and all that, and night vision and all these things, or using the UV to make the stuff with like pigeons and all of their colors shine brighter, because like there's so much more, like platypus with the black light. It's like you realize that's just its film. That's just the stuff that it uses to like help it be waterproof. It's whatever mucus they put on themselves or whatever. And it's like, that's so simple. Everyone knows that birds and stuff, like literally everything, has sweat or whatever else that's coating them to keep them protected from things. So like without all of that, you end up with a lot less. Like we clean eggs and whatever, but because of all that, like other eggs have the natural biofilm around that keeps them protected, and what we have is less biofilm, more susceptibility to outside bacteria and whatever else, and our stuff rots faster unless we put it in the fridge and everything else, versus everyone else has to clean the egg after they get it, and we're like, that's gross, clean it first, and like, or something. So fucking bright. The fact is, the measurements and the systems and the whatever, it's like light being time being based on everything else, the measurement of a distance being based off of light in a vacuum or something, and a meter is no longer about one thing, but it's about a reaction with another thing. And what happens if those constants change? Then it changes how long a meter is, even though that's less likely to change. And it's like, all this other stuff. The idea of a higher universe, you gotta remember, your physics on your universe, imagine Minecraft. It has the level of code that we've put into it to allow for individual pixels to now be resolute. And now you can interact with all those individual pixels. They all have hitboxes. They all have the ability to be pushed up against and climbed on and everything else. Minecraft is crazy, where every pixel is now a physical object you can interact with. And, like, we already had something similar to that, where, like, oh, the very steepest staircase or the very narrowest staircase, where it's like you go off of one thing, then you go onto a layer of cake, then you go onto a slab, then you go onto another thing, and then you go onto a chest, and the chest versus like the height of a chest versus the height of soul sand, and that fragment of a pixel versus an actual block. And the fact that the soul sand means that if you're in that soul sand and you go up to lava, you're not going to stop and lean over lava because it's actually underneath where the lava is. Lava is above it. So you're down a block. You just don't realize it. A fraction of a block. And it's like all of those physics and everything like that is based off of code that we can work off in our regular universe. Then imagine what it would be like to expand the fundamentals of physics to a higher dimensional universe. Light can go stupid fast compared to everything else. Interactions can happen at extreme speeds and whatever else. This entire universe can be one in trillions, and all of those can be housed within the same microcosmic little computer chip that someone has on the top level of the physics. And you could go above that and whatever, blah blah blah, and say that the next one above that also is more advanced, more powerful, more capable, and whatever else. Light, as we understand it, if we were to think that the universe on the top level has the same physics as the current level, it's stupid because it won't work. Abandon that, and you automatically think, well, yeah, it's just a trillion times faster. Now it's trivial to simulate the universe as it is here, because we're only simulating every goddamn quantum bit of particles in every bit of the entire universe, and only 1/trillionth of any given particle is ever visually seen at any given time, but we are rendering that whole thing all simultaneously. And it's nothing to us. Us on the top side. So if we wanted to, we absolutely could go and do whatever thing. And like immediately in your dreams, lucid dreaming, expanding into other places, you could do a transition into a spiritual plane and then go into whatever else stuff if simulation theory works. As far as physical realities go, it's more likely that you're just experiencing other things that involve parts of your brain and imagination that is all internal towards just your own body and its interpretations of things and its ideas of what is possible. Hallucinogenics and all that shit is just everything on the outside plus whatever's in your imagination expressed as one cohesive thing. So nothing is natural and regular and whatever else. Nothing can be transmitted from one you to the next person. You're not going to have any information transfer that way. But what you could perhaps do is leave hints or clues or whatever else that the next person interacting with it, if they're interacting with it at all, or if they're on a completely different site, an area, and stuff. And it would be interesting to think of that weed is literally the thing that could have been allowing people to have an understanding of all sorts of things. People say that they have had experience of understanding of the atom before anyone could ever visualize an atom. They knew the concept of it. They could say that they have had dreams of it, where you shrink down and then you suddenly see the atomic structure and everything, and it makes sense. Somehow being aware of that, because your brain is capable of processing and being aware of electrons and photons hitting your, like, electrons manipulating your head, photons hitting parts of your body, which are the eye stalks, the cones, and whatever else. All it takes for a person to have a greater amount of vision is to install better cones into the eye. And then the brain is able to interpret those signals differently and then have another range of vision. That's it. All we need is better hardware. The software doesn't care. So your avatar, like your body existing, who gives a shit? You could inhabit a body that is an octopus, and you will not know any different. You could transcend your regular body if you were replanted into an octopus and control it and have the impulse connections from its nervous system head to you. Your brain could adapt and become as good at being an octopus as you are being a human. But then also you have the vision, the ability to camouflage, the ability to independently move all your arms, and have senses that are to taste and sensing everything around you more than we think we already can. Like, again, I can have something moving around my hand and whatever else, and if I do it right, I know where my fingers are relative to my other fingers. Like, it gets to be a stronger sensation, a stronger connection from one hand to the other. That's not even a fake thing. I can manipulate my headaches. I try not to because I can make it stronger and worse. Or I can spread it out and pull it all away, and then there's no pain in my head whatsoever for a time, and then everything resets to its normal inputs. That's a thing I can do. I could make my body warmer or colder if I wanted to. But, like, people don't have that. Normally people don't have that kind of control. People can't just breathe superheat just because they want to. Breathing slowly, obviously, is more likely to breathe superheat. But, like, if your area around you isn't cold enough, then it's not able to be affected by the heat and it doesn't get expanded. It's like you pour water, and then if you're pouring water into any container, the higher the water goes, its reflection and its noise and motion dampening, creating the specific sound that then gets picked up by your ear. You can then differentiate and know how full the container is by hearing certain sounds. Be like, it's getting up to this height, this height, this height. Stop. And all of that. You can be aware of these things if you memorize those sounds per bottle, per whatever. It's like I can know how full this is as I pour more into it. has to do with experience and making the model, making the understanding of the concept of the thing that you're experiencing. Whatever. I'm not the one rendering my hand when I'm not looking at it, or whatever. I'm not rendering anything about the physical space. I am only taking in inputs, making a simulation of... There is a simulation of the complete three-dimensional space in my body, around my body, extended by if I hold a thing, I can know, obviously like a blind man, I can go poking around with a stick and be like, well, if it moves the stick a certain amount, or whatever else, I can tell it's here, or it's there, and how much, and does it do this thing, or does it do that, or does it hit the fabric? Is it hitting my teeth? I can tell from the stick all those different sensations and I can interpret them, and if I'm attuned to that, I have extra ability to see based on whatever vibrations that happen to be going by. Tremor sense and all that shit. Tough. The ability to see things in gravitational waves is the most sensitive. Like, you're literally able to look at things from one position and you could be aware of everything in the country as well as everything in the sky out in the galaxies. If you're sensitive enough to gravitational waves. That's freaking crazy. Because it's just it's just a sound. It's just a vibration. It's just the ability to pick up on those sounds. And then you'd be able to know all... Gravitational waves are just a sound, by the way. It's just another type of sound. You cannot say otherwise. It doesn't matter if it's we say auditory sound, but the difference between gravitational waves and the vibrations going through the material of the thing itself that then gets filled by the fingers that were holding the container, that is gravitational waves. It's the same difference. It's the ripple of the fabric. It's the sensation of the gas going through the sphincter, not just the sound of the farts. That's a whole other thing. Not many people would be able to feel the same vibration of the sphincter, but they can hear the sound of the farts. But if your senses are powerful enough, you could probably detect the sphincter.
Well, Professor Hoffman, this has been a delightful conversation. Thanks for...
Okay, bye.